Yes, Spurs fans, welcome back to the IrishHotspur here. This is going to be your weekly panel show the day after a very, very boring transfer window. Let's be perfectly honest. And we're going to be discussing it, rating it. I'm not sure it's going to be the best of ratings. And we're going to be looking as well at a lot of what Romero has had to say. Once again, Romero in the source of controversy and has called out the board for, we'll find out from Dave. I'm curious actually how many times, maybe this is the 10th time at this point that he's called out the board. It seems like they feel like Thomas Frank has enough to work with. He has enough to survive relegation, maybe enough as well to compete for a European spot. But we are going to be discussing, his ability to be able to navigate through the rest of the season without any more players really added, other than, of course, Sousa and Conor Gallagher. So plenty to talk about here today, everybody. Do smash the like button for us as you come in. Do leave your comments as well. If you are a member of the show, leave us a question for after the show that we can discuss. And really do appreciate anybody that's tuning in and picking us as your destination to chat about what was, in my opinion, a very, very boring and sad end to a transfer window. But maybe just to start off on one little bright note, Solanke for you, Billy, was that the goal of the season?
Well, I mean, you could Tottenham in themselves could have their own goal of the season contest, couldn't they? Really, with the amount of goals that we've scored that have been incredible. I think scored 4 bicycle kicks, I believe. Richarlison has scored one from the halfway line, and then we've got that ridiculous Mickey van der Ven goal. I think it's close between that and van der Ven. I think I watched a few of those slow motion videos on Twitter of it that the club keep posting. I love how they're using the Solanke goal to be like their shield at the moment, aren't they? From any transfer related anger, they just keep posting the Solanke goal. But yeah, what a goal, man! But I think it's pretty close between that and van der Ven.
Yeah, they're kind of lucky that they had that Solanke goal just to post a million times and rehash in different camera angles. And then also, if you noticed, there's, I think, 2 or 3 Spurs birthdays that have happened over the last few days as well that they've just been using. So best of luck to the Spurs admin. They've definitely had a lot more to work with than they probably would have.
I remember 2 weeks ago when, after the West Ham game, when obviously everyone was like, Frank's going this morning on the Monday morning. The first thing they posted was "Happy birthday to Stefan Freund." So it's definitely their ace in the hole that they like to use.
They just go to the whiteboard. Any birthday? Is there any birthday that we can find? Please, somebody. Even if it's the tea ladies,
or like a charity tweet or something like that, because then no one can be angry at it.
Seriously, Dave. I just wanted to start off on one little happy clapper note. What is Solanke's goal the best of the season for you in the Mickey van der Ven camp?
I also like Romero's and overhead. Paolini has an overhead to his name as well. Yeah, look, for me, I can't remember the last time I've seen a scorpion kick scored. So for me, it's got to be, goal of the season. But I absolutely love it. And the thing is, it's not like you've done it against a bad goalkeeper either. Donnarumma is a
massive tall goalkeeper as well.
Massively tall as well. And, just how far he was out from the goal. They're easy to balloon over the bar or not even make a connection with. The fact that he managed to lob him from how close he was as well, it's sensational.
Yeah, had the perfect flight. And we're also probably just taking for granted what Mickey van der Ven is capable of. It seems like he's just going to score one of those goals every single season, at least once or twice. So if anything, we're probably just getting bored by the fact that he's that good and could just go on a 70-yard run and be able to put it in the back of the net. Just going to welcome some people in and we will get this show underway. Want to say hello to Paul Connor, who's in here nice and early, saying even Jack and Dave and the panel. What last 24 hours have we had at this club? I'm with Romero, by the way, calling the club out. Probably tried to do it behind the scenes and had enough of the incompetence of the board. We have a lot of questions on Romero, Paul, so hopefully you can tune in for that section. Shawnee Maddox saying another disappointing window, but at least I have Solanke and Xavi to provide a reason to watch Spurs. I think we're all looking for reasons to watch Spurs, Sean. That's maybe a good one. Good luck to you. David Hall is in the house. Limpy Down Under is in as well. Good to have you guys. Andrew's in here. Benny Guy, Daniel Sandoval, Magic J. We had a chance to have a kebab if we actually got the winner there, Magic J, but unfortunately not. Surreal McCoy's is in here. Ghosted is in the house as well. Do really appreciate you guys. One and only Wayne Bonner. Good evening, folks. I hope you're all well. Superb window yesterday. Plenty of quality signings to help this team out. Oh, wait, typical Enoch shit. Enoch out. It's same old, rehashing the same conversations that we've been having for years. Trinidad, evening, gents. Change is painful. Just how much longer, though? Come on, you Spurs. Scotty Hyndham's in the house as well. Good to see Dropkick Your Teacher and Colin Turner as well, and plenty of others joining in. Like I said, everybody, we would appreciate if you smash the like button. Just send this out to more and more people. And thanks for tuning in to this one, but we're going to get this show underway. Now, Billy, Alistair Gold, right before the window officially opened, said that a left wing was a priority. A natural left back would be sought after either now or in the summer. He also said that we would be adding another midfielder that would be a key upgrade if the right candidate could be secured in this January window. He also said that if Spurs were to move for a striker, it would have been Samu from Porto. And he said that they would allow Johnson and Draxler to leave for the right price. In all fairness, he was actually right about Johnson leaving. He was right about adding another midfielder, right about adding a left back. But the fact that he said first and foremost that we would be adding a left winger and then that was a big priority. What do you make of that? Like, do you think that's probably the biggest disappointment?
It's okay, guys. We bid for Semenyo, so they're ambitious. We bid for Semenyo, so everything is fine. Yeah, just crazy. I mean, so Thomas Frank on Friday, I think it was, when he came out and said about the Semenyo bid, I think it was a bit of a shot in the a shot in the foot, like a cell phone, really. Because if you're telling me the scouting network and whoever it is, Paratici or Langer, and by the way, I saw that Fiorentina signed 4 players this transfer window, so I think we can all tell where Paratici's loyalties lie this window. So whoever's in charge this window, be it McKenzie, Langer, Paratici, if you're telling me on about day 3 of January we bid for Semenyo, get rejected, Semenyo politely declines us, who's next on the list? Like, what happened there? How is there no other name in world football after Semenyo? Because if your list is just Semenyo and no one else, you're not doing your job. You're not doing your job as a scout. You're not doing your job as recruitment. Semenyo was a wild shot in the dark anyway, because we know that he's one of the best players in the Premier League this season, and everyone who wants him is Liverpool, Man City, Man United. So we've got a really small chance. So if you're telling me, right, we need a left winger, we've identified one, Semenyo, we're going to bid big for him, fine. That's not worked. Who do you go to next? It's baffling incompetence. I can't believe there's no left winger in world football that they couldn't have gone to after Semenyo. It's just, and this wasn't a surprise as well. We had a big transfer saga in summer as well about for Savinho for left winger. Then he gets injured, fine, but there are other options available, and they've had 4 months to plan this. They knew they needed a left winger in summer. They know they needed a left winger in January. They didn't get one. It's just, I honestly think our entire recruitment team needs to be removed and we need to start again fresh, because if your entire job comes down to you prioritizing a position and having one name on it and then no one else, that's not recruitment. That's just, that's mental.
I mean, Johan Lange to me gives me real Steve Hitchen vibes in that I think he's plenty of times given similar quotes to transfer windows being really difficult, etc. Whereas Paratici had this enthusiasm around a transfer window. I think one of the last January transfer windows, Johan Lange, we heard was out on vacation or something like that for 10 days of it, which really just says a lot to me.
That's true.
Yeah, so I wonder what's been happening behind the scenes. Maybe he just forgot that he was in January. Sam,
I know we will. I know we will talk about the window more broadly, but I'm really looking forward to seeing the Langer video that will drop this week, because how on earth are they going to stretch that out? Or they might just I know that they're planning to record it today. I wonder if they'll just sack it off completely, because it's going to be such bad PR for the club. But how can they make that video half an hour long? It's just, I'm very interested to see what that's going to be like.
I was actually on a run and I was thinking about whether they would turn off comments or not, because when you do turn off comments, it almost, turns to even being more negative. But then if you do leave the comments there, they're just going to absolutely eat them up like wolves. Sam, I've been harsh on Ali Gold in the past, but in fairness, he was right about Johnson leaving. He was right about Spurs adding a midfielder. He was right about Spurs adding a left back. But the thing he mentioned first in the list of priorities for this window was that the main priority was to add another left winger to the club. Was that your biggest priority, was to add a left winger, or was kind of signing a midfielder and a left back more important for you?
I think that probably left wing was my priority position. I think that a lot of the time we concede chances because we can't sustain an attack, and that's not a new thing for me either. That's something that's been happening for a long time at Spurs, probably before Ange as well. And I feel like if we actually had a competent left winger, other than, the only person who's really staked any sort of claim yet not got any minutes is Tell on the left. Everyone else seems to play better on the right. So for me, I do feel like left wing was probably the priority, because I look at our attack and it's just incomplete, and even the players who I said are playing better on the right, they're not even wingers either. I mean, obviously Odebear is, but Kolo Muani's not. And I feel like I would back, and I'm sure that a lot of other people would back Frank to be able to be more defensive, like to cover the defensive frailties of not getting another midfielder or a left back or a centre back or whatever. Whereas I feel like he doesn't have the tools in his arsenal to make that a failing attack perform, unfortunately, from what we've seen so far, which is obviously disappointing for me. And all of us, I'm sure. But I thought that he would come in and make much more of an impact with these players than I have seen. So yeah, I'm pretty disappointed, as you can tell.
Yeah, it was a depressing end to that window, that's for sure.
Especially,
Dave,
you know what it was? They gave us that like random Dango Ouattara like doing his medical at Spurs little bit of news, and I'd done so well like through the whole. It was like a rumor that was going around that to get Akliouche that Ouattara was doing a medical at Spurs to like speed up the process of getting Akliouche in, and I'd done so well like the whole window to hardly even really read any rumors and not get in, but on the last day I just couldn't help myself. So the fact that we signed no one just made it like all that little bit worse. Like another one in the books, you know, no one in.
You were doing a dry January of the ITKs of Spurs, and then on the very final day you broke. It sounds like, yeah, I don't blame you, to be fair. Dave, just quickly on this, signing a left back, you would say was important. It's once again, Spurs seem to leave it like 3 seasons until they finally signed an extra fullback that they usually have needed. But wouldn't you say that everyone's main priority was to sign that left winger? And it seems like that was also what Ali Gold was saying, that Spurs' main priority was, yet I guess we attempted to sign Semenyo, so we should be happy.
I mean, I'm actually starting to feel sorry for Frank to a certain degree. You know, listening to Sam talk there, it's like, you know, it's clear he hasn't made the best out of this bunch, but at the end of the day, with injuries and stuff, the guy still needs help, and we're not bringing in the players in the right areas that are really going to help sort of Frank kick on. And one of them, a forward player, would have been absolutely crucial for that. But look, it's not like Spurs didn't try. You know, I think they went after Semenyo, but unfortunately, compare us to Man City, better manager, better structure, ambition, go and win trophies. He's going to sign on there all day long. You know, I think we were looking at Diamande from Leipzig. I've no doubt we were priced out of the market on that one. You know, in terms of Spurs were only willing to pay so much, and Leipzig probably wanted top dollar for their players. But the reality is, I'm not being funny, Jack, but I sort of expected yesterday to be a damn squid. I told everybody at the end of the watch along the day before, don't expect Spurs to do anything tomorrow. You know, it's just not going to happen. We are not an attractive proposition for players we want. You go back to the letter that was in one of them programs there before January. They said, we believe in our current squad, but must add more quality, experience and leadership to compete consistently at the highest level. And Thomas Frank also said to us in the pre-match press conference there before the weekend that, you know, if Spurs can't get their targets in, they're not going to make any moves and sort of just clog up the squad because it'll affect what we can do in the summer. And the excuses were already coming out before deadline day happened. So I'm not surprised we didn't get anybody in yesterday. But in general, and this is something I've been saying all January, we can sit here and scream for signings. But when we are as much of a shit show as we are, with no ambition at board level, your captain's clamoring to get out of the football club and calling them out for lack of ambition. You know, we can't even have the lure of playing in the top half of the Premier League anymore. We finished 17th last year, and this season we're in 14th. And then when you look at Thomas Frank, especially if you're a forward player, if we've already signed 3-4 players in the summer and their numbers are dramatically decreased from what they were doing at other clubs, why would you want to come and play under this guy? You know, because at the end of the day, he's proven he can't get enough out of what he's got. So it's not exactly screaming that you're going to enhance your career, enhance your numbers and stuff like that and kick on here at Tottenham Hotspur. So right now, we are just not an attractive proposition to a lot of players. You go back and you look in the summer, we only got Xavi and Simmons and Kolo Muani because he couldn't get his move to Juventus and Chelsea pulled the trigger, you know, decided not to sign, you know, Xavi Simmons. We got Paulini out of Bayern Munich because he was begging for game time ahead of the World Cup. We only got Conor Gallagher this January again, because he's trying to put himself in front of Tuchel and sneak into that World Cup squad. We aren't getting players that are coming here based on ambition. We're getting players coming here looking for minutes because of our injury crisis, and they see it as a quick route to a World Cup squad. It's a huge problem. We don't have the pull as a football club anymore. It's a concern.
Yeah. You could say, you make an argument in a case that a lot of the signings have been opportunistic, which is fine, for a few signings. But like you say, sometimes it would be necessary to actually just go after the real targets that you want instead of the ones that you think you could make a deal on or that are just obviously available. But to you, Billy, on this one, it seems like Spurs have decided, or at least with the lack of ambition this window, that they seem to think they have enough to survive a relegation battle. Do you think so?
I think they have enough to survive a relegation battle because we're now effectively 10 points clear. But I don't think we have enough to do anything beyond that, which is a disaster in itself. When Thomas Frank is coming out on Friday and saying that the squad is weaker now than it is in January, it was at the beginning of January, that's unforgivable on every single level. That cannot happen at a football club. So we're actually closer now to Europe than we are to relegation. And there was probably a chance with a couple more signings to go and actually try and do something and maybe get back into Europe next season and maybe go on a bit of a run in the Champions League. I don't think anybody can, even the most optimistic Spurs fan could think that we're, going to win the Champions League, but we might go on a run which might boost, massively boost morale around here. An 8th place finish in the Conference League is not beyond if we actually showed a bit of ambition in the window. The fact that our squad is weaker after the window than it was before is unforgivable on every level for me.
And to you, Sam, the optimist, I'll say, at least maybe you can try to be if you want to. Should they have invested more to try and secure potentially a European place? Billy just mentioned that with that point against Man City, we are technically closer to now finishing in a European spot than we are to being relegated. Do you think Spurs have done enough to give Thomas Frank the weapons or the tools he needs to finish in a European spot?
No, I don't. And I wanted to say, but I forgot to say it when I was doing my opening speech. Billy said, he said, "Oh, we tried for Semenyo and he politely declined." Then all I could see as you said that was him going to the fans as he tried to do a backflip against us and fell over. But no, I feel like, to be honest, I feel like it's gross negligence from the club. We've basically, again, I personally think that we're gonna not get relegated. Not that we can't get relegated, but I just feel like the other teams, they are just going to be worse than us. I feel like we'll be able to shithouse our way to enough points to stay up. It will probably be like, if it ends up being that way, it will probably be tighter than we'd want. But I think that we'll have enough to stay up. And, I have been saying, obviously, I said I'd start to judge him when we got to January, which I feel like I have been. But I did say, until sort of around now, you can't really tell because the league's always so close. One game could get you 14th, one game could get you 5th. Obviously, that's different, starting to get different now. But the way the season's gone, with so many teams underperforming and a lot of the lesser teams overperforming, and looking like they're looking to strengthen, at least more than us. You look at Palace. I know obviously they didn't end up signing Dwight McNeil, but they ended up spending 85 million on. I mean, admittedly, that I wouldn't have spent 85 million on the 2 players they bought, but at least they're trying. We have a net spend of 13 mil or something with what they did. So they told us at the beginning of the window and in the middle and towards the end they were going to spend money. I feel like I said to you guys at the beginning of the season, these owners, they're just an extension of what we've already seen. And I wasn't willing to believe that the Lewis family rebrand. They're just ENIC 2.0. And it's frustrating because I feel like they could have done so much, but we didn't actually, I feel like, as I said, we didn't actually want or believe they would do that much, but they kept telling us, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to change our wage structure. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We thought them signing Romero in the summer was quite a big step in the right direction. And yet here we are now 6 months later, and it's looking like we might not be able to sign Mickey van der Ven on a contract extension.
Can I ask you a quick question on that, Sam? Do you think it's a case that they genuinely believe that they were going to do it and they actually tried? It's just players just don't want to come here right now.
I don't understand. Like, I get what you're saying, and I don't. I'm sure there is some truth in that, right? With certain players that they did try to get, but I think that it harks back to a lot of the panel shows we've had before discussing the likes of Johan Lange and Paratici and Vinay and all the new board members. There seems to just be absolutely no cohesion. You know, it's kind of like they have no chemistry. It's like they're players on a pitch with no chemistry, but the difference is they're not players on a pitch. These are people paid, you know, unbelievable mouth-watering sums of money. And they can't even get their act together to get us a couple, you know, half-decent loans. You know, I'd prefer to be here whining that we ended up signing, I'm not going to say Sterling, but, you know, signing someone who was like half-decent on loan and saying we could have done more to get a better player. Yeah. But instead we're sitting here saying, well, you know, Conor Gallagher, he's all right. You know, he'd probably do a decent job. Sousa, we don't know anything about him. And, you know, that other player that, you know, with no name, you know, son a few youngsters, maybe they'll be good for us. Who knows? But, you know, I'm sure Dave can offer more insight into that. But I just feel like the trajectory the club's going, you've just come off the back of winning a Europa League. You're, again, slipping towards the clutches of relegation. How can you not feel like there's sufficient need to genuinely go out there and back the manager? Even if you don't think he's the guy, go out there and get club signings like the club does all the time. I just think it's unacceptable, to be honest. I feel I'm good at calming myself down after the fact of this stuff, but I'm working myself up again because if you actually think about it, it's just genuinely criminally insane.
I love the point that you made, that they said that they had a war chest, they had funds available, and that they were going to have ambition in the beginning of the window, in the middle of the window, and then at the end of the window. And yet they managed to do nothing, which in a way is almost more infuriating. I just wish they just stayed silent, really. And then we're just speculating the whole time whether they actually were going to have any ambition or not. But the fact that they said that they would, and then they clearly didn't, is just almost more infuriating.
Right. Yeah. I do think the reason why we're having it, we had a very difficult January transfer window, is because I think the club really needed to realise in the summer that off the back of the Europa League, it overshadowed a lot of what went on in the Premier League. And that was the time to strike while the iron was hot. You know, well, in terms of managerial appointment, showing more ambition with that, but also getting a lot of our signings in earlier over the summer. You know, in terms of showing more ambition, we wouldn't be sitting in this situation right now if they had took that opportunity and ran with it. But they didn't. All of a sudden, now we're back down here because of the unambition in the summer. And now you're in a position where I've no doubt Spurs were in the market, ringing up agents, players, and everything else. But we would have got what we got with Semenyo. Sorry, I'm out. You know, players that we're looking for to come in and improve this situation. We're competing with top clubs around Europe for these guys. We're the last option on their list. We've seen that in the summer with Simmons, with the likes of Mawani. You know, you've seen even players turn us down like Eze, Gibbs, White. That tells you everything we need to know. We are not this attractive proposition that everybody thinks we are. You know, a couple of years ago when you had the likes of Conte, Jose, they would attract players themselves coming in this football club. You also, you know, under Poch, we played football the right way, so you could bring players in. You know, we were competing up the top of the Premier League. And at that time, a lot of players seen us as a club that would enhance their career. And they get their next step to your Real Madrid, your Bayern Munich, your Barcelonas. We're not that club anymore. We're a club that's been down the bottom half of the Premier League for the last 2 seasons. Just hovering above relegation. We're like what Everton were a couple of years ago. We are not that attractive proposition anymore. And that has to be a start realization. And that's why more people need to start going after this board. We can sit here and say, oh, well, you know, we can pay the wages, we can pay the transfer fees. Look at the size of the stadium, the state-of-the-art training complex. That's not enough to convince players to come anymore. Players have ambition. When you're growing up as a player and you're out playing on the field with your friends, you dream of playing in a World Cup, you dream of playing in the Premier League, you dream of playing in the Champions League, you dream of lifting them trophies, you dream of playing in all them finals. Tottenham ain't offering you that. And with the clubs we're competing with, we're the last on the food chain. That's why we're sitting here this January. And I know that, Jack, you asked a question about relegation. I'm just going to answer that quickly too. Look, I think it depends on certain players staying fit. We are losing player after player after player this January in terms of injuries. You carry a couple more, and the fact that the club didn't bring back any youngsters with first-team experience under their belt, if they couldn't sign players, we are now relying on under-21s that have zero experience whatsoever to come in and try and sort this situation out in such a toxic environment. And also, when you look at the Premier League, in the last 5 games, Wolves have picked up more points than us. West Ham have picked up more points than us. Nottingham Forest have picked up more points than us. And Leeds United have picked up more points than us. The only team that hasn't below us is Crystal Palace. So all them other teams, and Burnley, sorry. So all them other teams are starting to get their act together. They're starting to pick up points. And if we carry injuries, we're going into these big games less competitive than what we were against Man City and stuff like that. And that's where you slowly find yourself being dragged down in amongst the relegation battle. I am not taking safety, for granted this season. I can just see so many things. And if we get an injury to Dom Solanke, we are absolutely fucked because you have no one to put the ball in the net. And if you don't have anyone to score you goals, you will not get out of a relegation battle. So I'm not taking it for granted.
Frank even admitted to actually rushing back Dominic Solanke even sooner than they would have liked even. So thank God that he has been able to push him. Just want to take this from Colin Turner, who's been very patient. Thank you, Colin. You had some good comments here on Romero. We will be getting to the Romero discussion. Yeah. He's saying that maybe it was just having to do with just the medical team he was calling out, just being down to bare bones. It's an interesting thought there, Colin. So we will get to that. Do appreciate your support. He also put in another decent comment saying the club have become a license to just print money. I don't even mind that, but the number one priority should just be the football team. I think a lot of people think it's very fair, very balanced there, Colin. But yeah, I think most people would agree with that. Tom Lowry saying, stop taking survival for granted. We have been related to an Everton in the past, Dave, in that they just kind of seem to bank on the fact that they would just survive every season, but they got damn near close, if not a few minutes away from being relegated at one stage if they weren't saved by a few players. It's hard to know how close Spurs are to that because it does feel like we are getting close to it. It's just, can we avoid that sort of type of drama because Everton fell so far.
Yeah, but we're making the same mistakes they made that dragged them into that situation, Jack. They had good managers. They had Ancelotti in there at one stage. They had some top managers in there at one stage. But once they burned through them and stuff like that, they ended up getting managers then that weren't of the right caliber to help kick them on or help push them up the table. And they brought in managers then that were used to fighting at the bottom half of the Premier League. Where have we been recently? And what do we have in charge right now? And then you look at the amount of mistakes they were making in the transfer market, the amount of players that they were bringing in weren't working out. We're also making them same mistakes. So we're doing exactly what Everton done to find themselves in that situation. The only thing is they turn back to David Moyes to drag them up. Maybe we'll turn back to Poch in the summer and hopefully he can fucking raise us back up. But we're making the exact same mistakes. And I know people say, come on, we're more attractive than Everton. Yeah, right now we are. But I'm not saying we're not. But my point
we're making the same mistakes as them.
Yeah, but my point as well is, we're not that big six team anymore that can offer this, that, and everything else. So the stepping stone to Real Madrid and all. Look where we've been the last couple of years. We're heading in that direction. And there's a lot more teams in the Premier League now that are much more attractive propositions than Tottenham Hotspur. And that's the reality.
No, I think the only reason I brought up Everton is because it does seem like we're slipping and falling and taking advantage of surviving, at least, just like they did for many years. And so I think that's where Tom Lowry's spot on there. Sam, I'll pass this one off to you. Very generous from Tom, very generous from Colin, very generous from Jerome here. He's saying, I don't think it has anything to even do with the owners. They only have, since they only have left an incompetent Johan Lange in charge of the recruitment. The Lewis family probably injected a lot of money, but Lange is incapable of bringing in reinforcement. I have made this argument in the past when it came to Steve Hitchens, Sam, that even though, yes, Daniel Levy would kind of be in the way or not maybe provide the funds that were always necessary, it's not like we're operating on a £20 million budget. There is money there to work with. Sometimes it just takes a more savvy, clever director of football to make the most of what you're given, which is why I think we even praised Paratici in the past, because he was able to get deals done despite maybe the limitations. Do you think Johan Lange could be another Steve Hitchen, just sheer incompetence?
Yeah, I do. I from the beginning, there was all the stuff about him being an Aston Villa reject, etc. I think I kind of agree with what Jerome's saying. I don't think he said anything wrong. I just think that I disagree with where like the power lies, because the owners, the buck stops with them, right? If they've hired someone who's incompetent, then for me, that's on them. They should have seen this a year ago, 6 months ago, 18 months ago, whatever.
Yeah.
But they haven't.
That's true.
And they've allowed him to stay in power. And, you know, whether or not you love or loathe Paratici, he's left seemingly because the state of the back room is in such a shambles that like he doesn't want to work in that. He preferred to go to a team that's on like threatening relegation as well in the Serie A with considerably less money to go out and do stuff. Yet they end up signing 3 players in the transfer window, and you know we signed 1.5.
The thing is, and I think they're like, you know, there has to be a real realization, and I keep hammering home at this point. Director of footballs are so important inside your football club now. You know, when you look at managers, they're not managers anymore, they're head coaches, which means they're head coach because they're taking away all their say in terms of transfer market, you know, the power to, you know, I want this player, I want that player, etc. Their job is now just to get the best out of what is provided to them. So your director of football is so important. To Sam's point, given how he fucked up the Ange Postecoglou transfer window in the summer, the season before, how was he not sacked? You know, then you look at last January when we were in a similar situation and we needed players in. He brought in a load of kids, some of them which were looking to move on this January. How is he not being held accountable and sacked for that? Then you go into this summer, the fact that we left a lot of our business so late and we were being torn down by fucking Eze, and we had a pants pulled down by Nottingham Forest, who spent the previous 21 years in the fucking championship. He should have been sacked. He shouldn't have been here to conduct this January transfer window at all. As soon as the board realized we were in trouble, they should have pulled the trigger and brought in someone capable of conducting business, you know. And at the end of the day, I've said this about Johan Lang. People need to go back and look at his history of recruitment at Tottenham, at Aston Villa, you know, etc. It has been absolutely woeful. He cannot sell the club to big players. He cannot sell the ambition to big players. He can't sell it to big players, which leaves him then to going out and buying young kids. That's what it is at the end of the day. He is not good enough at his job. But to be honest with you, the Lewis family have no experience running a football club. They're daddy done. So they're probably listening to Johan Lang and going, "Jeez, he's great." And they're relying on him and everything else. Relying on the wrong people. When are they going to look at it and go, incompetent, incompetent, incompetent? Alan Sugar, you're fired. Get out the fucking football club. It's simple. You know, and at the end of the day, if they're not going to hold them accountable, then how do we ever expect them to hold Frank accountable or any of the other players accountable and stuff like that? It's just lunatics running the asylum right now. It's shocking.
I mean, it could be the case that I was just actually making the joke that maybe Johan Lang as agent is probably the best of sellers, because the fact that he's been able to land these high-profile jobs while being so incompetent is quite crazy. But yeah, he just reminds me of Steve Hitchen in the past, Jerome, where I agree like with what he's saying here, that the board at the end of the day are the ones responsible for hiring him. That was like Sam's point as well. And I think Sean Maddox was saying that they also share the incompetence of having someone as incompetent as Lange in charge of the recruitment. Like it is up to them to get rid of him. But I also feel like I remember in the past, a lot of people defended Steve Hitchen where they would say like, well, you know, he's not being given anything. He's not being given any support by Daniel Levy. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, he spent like 400+ million at the club. Like that's not nothing. Like if you have that much to spend, surely then you can be a bit more savvy about it and be able to still at least bring some type of good players, you know, through the door. And that's what I feel like with Johan Lange. I would sympathize with him. He probably is having similar struggles that many directors of football have had under the Enoch ownership. But at the same time, it's not like we're operating on like a Blackburn Rovers sort of budget or something like that. We're operating on some sort of type of, you know, minuscule budget. Like there is money available. It's just clearly the case that he's not capable of getting deals over the line or just knowing how to spend it properly. Like he spent 50 million pounds on Brennan Johnson, on the likes of Archie Gray, on plenty of guys like that we all knew just weren't really the right type of signings, and also very expensive. Like the end of the day, Matisse Tell, pretty expensive. Odebear, pretty expensive. I like those two players, but he's not gotten any of these young players on the cheap either. He spent already, I think, more than Paratici ever has at the club.
But the problem with this whole director of football model is you have a guy that is basically planning your squad in what vision he sees it, without any understanding of cohesion, you know, what the manager needs, you know, what formation the manager's going to play and everything else. You know, he's not the one coaching these players and stuff like that. And it's absolutely mind-boggling. They're putting all the power in these director of footballs. All clubs in general are putting the power in these director of footballs. You know, you need to go back to the old way where you do give the manager a bit of power in terms of, and saying the transfer market in terms of what you bring in. Because at the end of the day, he's the one working with these guys. He's the one that has to find solutions. He's the one that knows what he's really lacking. He's the one that at the end of the day knows what type of character he wants in his team. These are a lot of things that director of footballs just don't understand. They're not footballing people. They're not coaches. They're not managers. So why are we giving them the power to put a squad together? It's fucking insanity.
You know, he reminds me of like the classic caricature. Lange, this is. He reminds me of the classic caricature of like the state appointed lawyer. You know, he turns up at these meetings to try and, you know, lure the players over in a suit that he just like doesn't quite fit in, you know, sweat stains, and just doesn't have the, you know.
The board
maybe we'll wait a sec, see if he comes back here. Lange has just cut his Ethernet cord, cut his internet. We'll give him like a couple of seconds. Okay. We'll let him come back in. He'll come in straight back in. Just going to take this from Paul Connor, member for 29 months. Oh, we have you back, Sam. Sorry. It looks like
I knew it was coming. I could just, as Dave was talking, I was looking at the clock thinking, oh God, I haven't crashed out yet. Like, I know as soon as I get a chance to start speaking, it's gone. No, I was just saying he doesn't have the you know, the command of the language to draw the players in, and I'm sure they say things to him and he probably just kind of like mumbles his words, you know? So yeah, he doesn't fill anyone with any confidence. So I don't see how you could attract a prospective player to the club.
Totally. No. Paul Connor here, member for 29 months as an elite member as well. Very generous, Paul. He's saying, for me, this is just one window with this board. They have left us short for years and years and years, but this window is the worst ever. And it's Lange and the board manager has no say over what players come in. Now, maybe just throw this one back at you, Sam, actually. I do remember saying, well before this window even opened up, and probably the only reason I said it this way was because we didn't have nearly as many injuries as we do now. But I remember saying, like, I don't know if I can really judge the board, you know, over the January window. It's hard to get deals done in January. We have so many other players we got to get rid of. Like, it's complicated. It feels like now all of a sudden we are saying one of the worst windows ever. Like, how could they not get deals done? What do you think has changed? Like, why is it that maybe I've gone, for example, someone like me has gone from not really wanting to take this window that seriously to all of a sudden feeling really disappointed?
I just think it's like a culmination of everything that's happened in the last 6 years, you know, and it's really come to a head to a point where, you know, people worried that when Kane left, we'd become a mid-table Premier League team. It's looking worse than that at the moment. And I just think that, you know, finishing 17th, I know we win a trophy, but that's just like, you know, a bit of a port in a storm before you have to like set out again. And we've set out into these uncharted waters that have not been kind to us, you know, and look at the home fans, you know, you're seeing, 6 wins in the last year. It's just unthinkable, you know? So to be seeing this stuff, you know, a lot of fans think that they could, you know, manage a team better or run a team better than the owners or the manager. But at Spurs, it genuinely feels like that is actually the case. You know, you're not being outlandish for saying that, because it's like, we need this, so go out and get this. The whole reason people liked Paratici, I think, is the fact that he had so many options for one position, you know? It's like, okay, I can't go out and get Lookman. Boom, I've got, I don't know, I can't think of a name right now, but I've got someone else lined up straight away. So, yeah, fuck you, whatever. And it just feels like we've been sold this dream, mostly by Daniel Levy, but by the club, that we're the most self-sustainable club, you know, in the history of modern football, and, you know, everything's roses and we can do what we want, except every time it comes down to business, time to paying the check, you know, suddenly their wallet's been left at home and they're doing like the patting themselves down to pretend where like, oh, I swear I have my wallet. I don't know where it's gone. And I just think that the fans are genuinely fed up of it, you know, and I think there's only so much hatred you can direct towards one man in Thomas Frank before it boils over and it starts to seep into the people behind him, which is, you know, unfortunately for Frank, what we all want. You know, we want them to be held accountable. And I think that, I don't know if it's tin foil hat stuff, but all the Levy stuff in the background, I'm sure that has played some sort of, you know, role in the fact that we've signed no one. But from a fan point of view, we're just stuck in the middle of basically billionaires having a bitch fight over a club that they seem to not even care about, because if they did, they wouldn't do the things that they're doing. And the Levy news that I was talking about is apparently he's looking to sell his share of the club, but the timing of that, I guess, potentially is quite damaging, seeing as those rumors came out in the last week of the window, and all the stuff I was seeing, not necessarily that it was corroborated, was that like it was quite a sinister deal that was being planned in the background to challenge the ownership and make it difficult for them to do what they needed to do. So if that is the case, then they have a tiny bit more grace from me. But ultimately, you needed to go out and do what was done, and they didn't do that. And for me, you haven't asked for my rating, but I'll give it to you.
Well, you can give it now, or we'll take it at the end if you want to change it.
No, I won't change it. I've been thinking about it long and hard. And well, I didn't even have to think about it long and hard. It's a 0. It's 100% a 0. Yeah. For me, this is the worst window ever that I've seen. I know that the Champions League, the 2 windows where we didn't sign anyone, but in those times we still had good players at the club.
Yeah, more of a solid
now
foundation.
We have nothing. You know, we've got a few decent players, a few players with good potential, but we've got no ready-made world-class players right now that can carry us, and we've lost goal scorers. So I think that we're genuinely worse off. Maybe in those previous years we stalled, but this time we've actually gone backwards. So for me, it's a 0.
I wanted to take this from Tyler here, and then as well, just wanted to say thank you to Jerome, thank you to Paul Connor, thank you to Tom Lowry, thank you to Colin for supporting the channel. We do really appreciate you guys. If you guys want to do what they have done and get in your opinions, your comments, we do really welcome it and appreciate it. And we're also going to take this comment from Tyler here saying, Lange is crap, no doubt, but it's not his fault that they didn't want to spend any more money. I've heard this argument from people in the past, and he's saying they don't want to put anyone else on the books because we do have a lot of players. This is what I kind of mean by what I was saying to Sam, Dave, you know, that Steve Hitchen argument, I think, in that, well, they didn't want to spend the money, so he can bring them the players, but they're the ones spending the money. I think Tyler's making a similar argument here. I feel like Lange personally did have money to spend, but he was incapable of doing it, to be honest.
I understand what the point Tyler's trying to get at, but I do think it's a bit of an excuse. You know, you look at Paratici, you know, in January transfer windows, didn't have money. He was able to still get a deal for Pedro Porro to bring him in here. Loan with a buy option.
Yeah, I missed the installments. Those are great.
It was the same with Kulusevski, right? You know, we brought him on loan, pay later. He managed to stretch the budget out. He had other ways around it, you know, in terms of bringing a player in here on a loan for a year with an obligation to buy on or option to buy and stuff like that. You know, he was also responsible for bringing in the likes of Romero and players like that. You know, so for me, you know, I think it's a bit of a cop-out. You know, Steve Hitchen spent nearly 400 million at this football club, but the common narrative was the board won't give him money to spend. Spent 400 fucking million at this football club on absolute shit. I'm not being funny also, but if I'm in charge of the club right now, and this is where I'm getting, you know, I wouldn't be giving Johan Lange any more of my money to spend, seeing what he's already produced with it. You know, I also wouldn't give Thomas Frank any more of my money to spend, seeing what he's produced this summer. You know, to be brutally honest with you, but at the end of the day, I keep saying this, your director of football is so important. You look at what Paul Mitchell done for this football club and the players he's brought in. You look at a lot of the players that Paratici has brought in. Yeah, there's a few duds on each list, but the majority of the players are better players.
Paul Mitchell had a smaller budget when you think about it too.
Yeah, but it's how these guys operate, you know. Can they seize opportunities like Paratici done? You know, can they get players in from bigger clubs like Paratici done? This guy There's no history of that. He has barely any contacts in the game. He can't even get into the room for a lot of these guys. So for me, your director of football is so important. I think we're just making excuses for Johan Lang. I mean, the club came out saying there was 150 million war chest to spend this January. So the money was clearly there.
Yeah.
But a lot to keep saying, Tyler, I have no doubt the club are ringing up agents, ringing up players. But the reality is there's two massive stumbling blocks. One, players don't want to come here. And two, like in the case of Andy Robertson, and I've said this time and time again in the January transfer window, if clubs can't get their other targets in, they won't let their players go. And that's exactly what happened with Liverpool with Andy Robertson. He would have came here, but Liverpool couldn't get Tsimikas back from Roma, or they couldn't get someone else in, which hindered what we can do. And I have no doubt a bit of that went on this January transfer window as well. And that's why we ultimately haven't spent anything. But what pisses me off is, with all of the high-paid numpties up there, that will still take bonuses, out of this football club, despite how this season goes. Did any one of them maybe look at going, well, Fiskovic is ripping it up in Germany. Why don't we pull him back for the rest of the season? Especially after what we've seen from Radu Dragosin at the weekend. Why don't we look at Mikey Moore? He's getting it together at Rangers. Why don't we bring him back here? Why don't we give him an opportunity? We're screaming out for a left winger. We couldn't get anybody in. Okay, bring Mikey Moore back. You want another midfielder? Why not look at Therese Hall, who's ripping it up out on loan? A player I told everyone about 3 fucking years ago. Why not call him back? Jamie Donnelly, why not call him back? He's not playing at Stoke. He was the catalyst at the under-21s. He was like De Bruyne for the under-21 team. Why not give him his opportunity? So the squad plan is absolutely shocking. How many players have we lost? Since January. Let me just check. I have it written down here in my notes. We've lost 9 players to injury in 2026. 9 since the start of the year. And yet then not one of them can start calling back some of these youngsters, but they're okay with Frank putting youngsters on the bench who have no first team experience. And that's ultimately why they didn't want to give some of the youngsters out on loan their opportunity in the first place, because they need to get out first team experience. Okay, well then call them guys back who you've given it to and send the next crop out on loan. The planning in general is absolutely fucking shocking from Johan Lang and this football club.
Sam, anything just quickly to say to Tyler? Like, a lot of people might feel this way that Tyler does, that maybe he had money to spend, they just wouldn't let him spend it. Do you agree with him, or do you feel differently?
I don't know. I mean, it's really difficult to speculate on this stuff because it could
put on
be
your tinfoil hat for us. If
it could be a whole host of reasons. And the thing is, I don't even know which way I would want.
The thing is, they had the money for Semenyo, though, right? Frank told us they were looking to get Semenyo.
You're right. I do think it's more on Langer than it is on the club, but then I also don't want to hold the club accountable, because as you're getting to the last few days of the window, and when it's not looking like we're signing anyone. If I'm the owner of the club, I'm going into the office unannounced, and I'm saying, Johan, I just wondering wagwan with the transfers. We bringing anyone in, or are we just going to keep letting people go? Because right now we're looking a bit thin, bro.
And the thing is, though, you walk into that office, he's probably sitting there with his feet up on the desk, cup of tea, watching The Simpsons or something. He probably doesn't even know it's January, Sam.
But so you were saying, Dave, before as well about how many players have gone out. I've got a list of the players that left the club in the window, if you guys are all right with me reading it. Brennan Johnson, 35 million. Kota Takai, loan. Solomon, loan. Donnelly, loan. Yang Min Hyuk, loan. Oliver Iro, loan. Damola Ajayi, loan. Akramich, loan. Scarlett, loan. Dorrington, loan. Abbott, loan. That's on top of all the players that are already out on loan as well. So we haven't even got any under-21s that can come in right now. we're literally down to the bare bones. There's nothing left. It's that gif. I've got nothing left.
It's like they're getting the young guys ready for the championship, and they're going to sell on currently what we have when we get relegated, and then they'll go, well, guys, we've got players with championship experience. Let's give them a go.
Yeah, we're trying to Southampton ourselves. THFC till we die. Dermatron saying, first big up, guys. The owners are paralyzed. They don't have the guts or the ideas that they have not have the guts to sack or back. Frank, Enoch out now. I think there's just a whole multitude of issues right now at the club, to be honest. Dermatron, everything from the medical team to of course, maybe not hiring in the right manager to, of course, the director of football, which we've been talking about a lot today. It just seems like, point out anybody that's employed right now at the club that seems to be doing a good job. Even Vinay right now is all of a sudden under pressure, not that long after being brought into the club. He's only been here for like about 7-8 months, it seems like, and he's already under massive threat and pressure. Thank you for the support, by the way, Dermatron. Jerome is saying, I am Frank out, but Johan Lange has failed him just like he did Ange. This transfer window failed again to do proper research and again brought in 2 kids and only 1 starter. We've been on this Johan Lange.
Starter, Jack? If we've got our full squad, is Conor Gallagher even a starter? I don't think it's 100%. Not that he's not good enough to be a starter. I just don't think it's 100% that he even brought in 1 starter. It's like 2 kids and a competition player.
Well, I liked what you said where it'd be nice if even they just signed somebody that we were just like debating over whether they were good enough or not. But the fact that we've signed no one to even debate over is kind of frustrating. And Conor Gallagher feels like one of those signings where some people do feel like he's a massive upgrade on the midfield. Other people, not so much. You could say even the Xavi Simons signing was a little bit similar, where some people were like, is he really like, the best one we could have gotten, with that money type of thing. And it's frustrating that they couldn't even do that. They couldn't even bring us a player that we could just debate over at least for like a week or 2 before they actually kick a ball. But Billy, we've been talking a lot about Johan Lange, basically not doing his job this window. And there's a bit of a debate over whether the board have let down Johan Lange and not allowing him to spend money, or is it really just him just being incompetent in being able to get players over the line?
It's difficult to know without knowing exactly what's going on behind the scenes, but
True.
I don't know. I think there's, I don't think he's had a couple of decent signings in Bergvall and some good youngsters, but I think if you add all the windows up since he's been here, it's just been failure after failure after failure. And I just think that, the club is not going in a clear direction, and he is the person who's supposed to be directing it. So I think ultimately he needs to lose his job. And I think it was really, we can go back to that Paratici interview a couple of months ago when they did it together. He effectively got demoted in that sort of thing, because obviously he was in charge of recruiting players. Then he got demoted to being in charge. I know they called it a promotion, which is a funny thing, but he got effectively demoted into be in charge of doing youth players only. And now Paratici has gone. He's gone back to the old job that he previously had. But obviously there was no faith or confidence in him because he got demoted. So I think while you could definitely, you never know how much the board are allowing people to have, I just think he's so incompetent at his job, and there's multiple windows of evidence of that now, that we just need a clean break and we need someone else to come in and actually steer the direction of this football club.
Yeah. I also am kind of in a similar boat where I'm also Frank out, not a big fan of Frank at all, but kind of like Dave, even as said Jerome, I do actually feel for Thomas Frank. He once again, is like many managers in the past, just failed to be backed and failed to be properly given the resources to try to succeed when that's happened so many times before.
Yeah, this time last season, Ange was coming out I remember Ange literally in December and November, almost begging for players in January. And, Thomas Frank essentially did the same by saying, we're weaker now than we were. And you have to, while I don't want Thomas Frank to be our manager and I don't want Lange to be our director of football, you have to look above them at some point and think, there is so much evidence of this going on from repeated patterns of years and years and years that really, you have to sympathise for anyone that's working under these owners, because they never give them the conditions they need to succeed. Really.
Yeah, you could make the case though that like maybe last year's January transfer window was even better than this, because at least we signed Kevin Danzo. Like Matisse Tell wasn't what we needed at the time, but kind of like what Sam said, like a debatable signing. At least whereas all we've had is Conor Gallagher, a Scottish kid on loan. That's not even technically a permanent deal, and then Sousa, poor guy.
My dad said something to me today, just quickly. I was on the phone to him, or I was over with him today, and he said something to me today that I sort of agree with him. He was like, he says, look, don't get me wrong, he gets the frustration towards the players, and he gets the frustration towards Thomas Frank. But right now they're the only ones that are bearing the brunt of it. When fans are booing and chanting, you got to start making chants about the board, chants about Johan Lange, chants about Vinay as well. And I get that because the players and the manager are the ones fronting this, that they're always bearing the brunt of the fans' frustrations. But I do think this is where fans have to start being clever and making sure that like Vinay, Joe Lewis, and Enoch also know that they're under scrutiny in terms of booing towards them, chanting towards them and stuff. My dad almost said, like, we are where we are right now. They're not going to get rid of Thomas Frank. Every fan should double down now and back the team and the manager and start showing all your frustrations towards the ownership. Now, I sort of agree with him on it. Part of me thinks he's just trying to get me on the Thomas Frank train, which I'm too clever for. But, I'm not going to sit here and say, we should back a manager. Like, at the end of the day, I still don't believe Frank is good enough. But, I think he should also hear, the boos and stuff like that. It's not good enough, the job he's doing. The players should also hear it. But we do have to start including the owners, Vinay and Johan Lang, because ultimately they are the ones that are responsible for this situation. The board mainly because they put incompetent people in such important positions, but also the board because the lack of ambition. They come out with more statements between them starting taking over this football club and now than what they have signed players. Yet all the statements are about ambition. Okay, well, where are the players? If you got ambition, where the fuck are the fucking players?
The board are pleased to announce that they have signed another statement to the...
Honestly, what winds me up is they showed more ambition towards the women's team this January than what they have the men's team. And that's because the women's team is much cheaper to do. As soon as January opened, I think they announced, 2 or 3 players for the women's team?
Yeah, 5
so
signings.
So they can do it with a bit of pre-planning and stuff. So where's that for the men's team? We're shelling injuries left, right, and centre. We're playing players that are
They're battling for the Champions League spot.
Yeah.
Well, they've clearly seen that there's an opportunity there, whereas with us, it seems like they've almost given up on us
They've
already.
given the under-21s and the women's team more than what they're giving the men's senior team. And the men's senior team is the biggest money generator out of the whole lot. It's a fucking shambles.
Surreal McCoy's member for 16 months saying Enoch showing low ambition is not sustainable. I think, especially with how much money continues to be invested in the Premier League. Like, again, I've made this point in the past, but when you're seeing Sunderland bring in players like Granit Xhaka into their team, when you're seeing only a few years ago, Nottingham Forest brought in Keylor Navas from PSG just to survive for like half a season, just to stay up. It just shows the ambition is just so much different now than what it used to be. And I'm not sure how much longer we can just rely on teams just being worse than us. Sam brought that up, and I think we benefited extremely from that last season. But even this season, we'll see if we can be the beneficiaries of it again. But it's a very dangerous game to play with how good even sometimes these relegation candidate teams are. Like, they're really not as bad as they used to be, at least in the past. That's for sure. Big up Surreal McCoy's. Wayne Bonner, 53 months as a member. Very generous, Wayne, saying Enoch have shit on this club and the fans for 25 years. Feels like we've rinsed and repeat these complaints and moans, to be honest, Wayne. It's getting very frustrating. It's almost like we just rehash some of the same conversations, and because we have to, but year after year after year, and so little seems to change. It's amazing that they just can make the same mistakes and cause the same frustration year in, year out.
Like, the frustration is, and I don't know whether it's a frustration or a reality, but like, a lot of what we see online, not just on YouTube, but on socials and stuff, everyone has their frustrations with the ownership. Whenever there's protests, planned and stuff like that previously, or like Billy has tried to organize and stuff, no one shows up. And then, like, the thing is, we had a chance to make a stand. People had a chance to make a stand against Man City. No one left their seats, but yet they're all sitting here moaning today about the lack of ambition, this, that, and the other. And I get yesterday, maybe the whole thing is we want to back the team. But when you see Romero coming out with statements he's coming out with and all, you are backing the team by standing with the people that are organising protests and stuff like that. So, like, and this is where I start to get frustrated. There's a lot of moaning about it. Look, I moan about it all the time, but the reality is, everyone's feeling the pinch right now. It cost me a couple of €100 plus that, to get over to the games and stuff like that. I can't make it to sort of vent my frustrations and all. But like, a lot of the people that do end up going to the games and stuff, is it just they don't see the same problems, or they don't care about it, or they're not as frustrated by it, or do they believe the owner's doing a good job? Because there's a lot of noise online, but when it's organised, people aren't actually turning up and sort of making a stand, and that's really, really starting to become frustrating.
Tim Man 007 saying we should and could have been 5 points from West Ham today. They were 2-0 up and we were 2-0 down. 9 points is nothing with our upcoming fixtures. This has to be the worst window ever. Sam seems to think it's the worst window ever, Tin Man 007. But Billy, to you on this one, I remember getting shivers when West Ham went 2-0 up against Chelsea. We've avoided a lot of, it's almost like we just delayed maybe the the worries, if anything, because we could lose the next game. West Ham could win their next one, and then we are back in the same position.
Yeah, I know. Luckily, this is how, the situation, it's real, is that I looked at their fixture list. They've got really, really tough fixtures. I think they've got Liverpool, Man City, Villa in the next 4. So hopefully there'll be a few losses there. But, at the moment, they're a more informed team than us. They're picking up more points than us, and they're putting in better performance than us as well. They were, that could have been, when they were 2-0 up there, that would have been 3 wins in a row. And obviously we've not won 3 Premier League games in the last 15. So yeah, I think now with 9 points plus a massively superior goal difference, hopefully we can start looking up the table. But looking at our next 3 fixtures as well, if we don't, I think we have to win one of those next 3 games. Otherwise, we're in big trouble. We have to get a win, probably against Newcastle at home. Otherwise, we're in real trouble. I think to lose 3 more games, that would be the end of February of no Premier League wins in 2026. That would be an absolute disaster. I know people are saying that we're unbeaten in 4 or whatever, but we haven't won a Premier League game in 2026 yet. So. Now, the reality is facing us that we could get dragged in, but hopefully we can start, a draw against Man City. We can start looking up the table rather than down, because I want to start heading towards Europe. But, it's only 5-6 points away, so we need to go on a run. But it's difficult to see where those wins are going to come from at the moment.
I mean, Sam, it is scary to think about that this board seemed to have no plans of signing anyone. And it could have well been the case that we would have only been 6 points off of West Ham after the fact that they haven't signed anyone. It's almost like they have benefited from the fact that West Ham lost that game. We got a point. I think we would probably even be more worried and frustrated, had West Ham won that game. I think you're on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, Sam.
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, I was probably more venting an opinion.
I was kind of like, what do I say?
Probably one most people agree with. To be fair, it's not like I'm saying anything ridiculous. I was just saying that it is frustrating, right? That they probably didn't have any plans to sign anyone in the last 4 or 5 days, and had the results gone differently, we could be talking about not signing anybody else to back up Frank, and we could only be 6 points off of West Ham with all these difficult fixtures still upcoming. So it's almost like we would be in further turmoil, further torture, had the results not gone our way this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like every time there's one of these turning points, and there's been so many this season, something happens that is just good enough to stop it for now. Stop all of the the riots, let's say, from the fans based on everything related to the club. So yeah, I mean, I look at it, I think we have all the traits of teams that have gone down in the past. Get the occasional big win against a big team, but then can't consistently beat the teams around us or anyone else for that matter, really. And you're just flirting with it. And I think that if we continue to not it might end up, I said people were complaining about Frank going more defensive towards the end of the game when it looked like maybe we could go and win it. My thought process for that was more, this could genuinely be the only point we get this window. So I could understand, they brought on Marmoush as well, not to get drawn back into the game, but I could understand him trying to shut up shop to basically think I've got to try and bed in now for this. And I if we get through this window, this month, and we don't have any more points, and then to be honest, I don't know what the games are, but they're going to be coming thick and fast, especially with Champions League fixtures coming in. I think that as well is a massive saving grace for them, because we're not, obviously us qualifying means that we're not playing those 2 games in between Arsenal and whoever the other teams are. Because that would have been horrendous, especially with the injuries. It feels like for the last month, basically every game for the last month, we've lost a player. And then we lose Mickey, Danso, and Spence before the City game. That alone, how can you not sign someone? It makes no sense, honestly. I can't even formulate sentences because I'm just so annoyed at the incompetence of the people above us right now.
I mean, they couldn't even form any transfers in these final days. I doubt they could form any sentences either, at least at the minute. Tin Man 007, really do appreciate your support, as well as Jerome's and some others. Just want to say hello to Shem Tan as well, saying 2 sporting directors, DOF, CEO, chief scout, and 4 months in, and they couldn't find a single player in the entire world to help our team. Then Frank spends a media time about how we almost signed a Semenyo. It's just ridiculous. And Tim Wukong also agreeing with Dave that we have all these kids out on loan that we could have actually used or at least had on the bench for some of these recent games. And just speaks of pure negligence, says Tim. I think Dave would agree with you there. Jerome with another one. Really appreciate generous support, Jerome. He's saying, how about walking out at the 75th minute as discussed instead of staying because we got back in again? Fans should make a proper statement with their discontent. I mean, you and I were chatting about this in the background, Billy. Like, maybe we just don't account for the fact that there are just a lot of Spurs fans out there that might not just think about Spurs on such a daily basis and feel maybe as passionately as we do about some of the issues at the club.
Yeah, completely. And I think what we've learned from that is it's really difficult to do things during the game because, you know, at the end of the day, most people just want to support the team, and I would never begrudge people for that. And I think, you know, protesting it can be really difficult, and you have to do things you don't want to do sometimes, like walk out on your team. But I think what Dave said is really, really important. You know, people say, well, if you walk out, you're not supporting the team. Well, I would suggest that the owners are the ones that are not supporting the team at the moment because they've left them short with, you know, 11 fit players. And when the captain's coming out and saying the owners are not supporting the team, the manager came out on Friday saying the squad is weaker. I think that's the difficult, that's the thing that needs to be addressed. And sometimes you have to make a stand. And I think, if things continue to get worse, Tottenham fans are going to have to do some difficult things at times to be able to get rid of these owners, because the problem is, as much as we are frustrated and as much as, we're angry, everyone is angry, the mood is really low, they're posting record profits year on year on year. Why are they going to just decide to go, oh no, there's a few people online that hate us, we're gonna leave now? They posted record profits this year. They will do next year as well because we're in the Champions League. In terms of finances, they've got no worries whatsoever. So, until we have to take a massive stand at some point as Tottenham fans and make it really difficult for them, they'll continue to use us as a cash cow.
Yeah. I think it's unfortunately the case, Jerome, that we're in a position where we as fans, continue to talk about and discuss all the ongoing issues. But I think there are just maybe a lot of fans that maybe just haven't woken up to it yet, just don't think about Spurs as often as maybe we do. So they're not maybe aware or really care yet, where Spurs are. I'd imagine, though, like if Spurs have more and more seasons like this of finishing 17th, 14th, 15th, paying the season ticket prices that they do, you would expect more and more people to get on board with what Billy is doing. But it just seems like not many people are as awake to it all, or maybe as frustrated as, some of the rest of us are yet.
I think there's definitely a proportion of people like that, but I'd also argue people are torn over supporting the team and making a stand against the ownership. What's the right way to go about it and stuff. And that's a continuous discussion you see when people are trying to organize protest ways about it and stuff. Everyone has their say, oh, that's not going to work, this is going to work, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, I think that's where a lot of people are torn, supporting the team and making a stand against the ownership. But, and I think that's what we're seeing, to be honest with you. I think yesterday, a lot of people, if we were 2-0 down, a lot of people would have headed out and made the stand against the ownership because we were in the game. Ultimately, they wanted to sit there and sort of support the team, and it's sort of like that's what I think people are torn by. But also, I believe if they realised how the last 15 minutes were going to go by, once we got back into the game, that Frank was going to instruct the team to sit off them and take the point. I think a lot of them probably would have actually left in hindsight and, went out and made a stand, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Just typical Spurs, just to to do that, really. Faz Radfar saying the board did the same to Ange last January. I think people were nodding when I said that. It's crazy, but you could argue that even last January was a better one than this one, Faz Radfar. But I think Ange said, going into the January transfer window, that he felt like the team was pretty weak and they needed reinforcements. He got them towards the very end, but he definitely wouldn't have said that it was probably enough to what he really expected and needed. And then Thomas Frank, before the January transfer window, did say, that the team is weaker, going into this window, and he still wasn't given the backing needed. It's just crazy. And Thomas Frank is going to have to probably pull back all those statements, because they're going to ask him about that, as they do. And I feel for the guy, because that's normally when a director of football should be answering those questions. It's not up to the manager to answer the questions that a director of football and an owner should really be answering. But for some reason in the UK, the manager is just forced to answer every single question when it comes to the club's failings that they don't really have much to do with, to be honest, Faz. It's very frustrating.
So looking forward to that Langer video, but I doubt there'll be any challenging questions, let's be honest.
That's what I was going to say. You know that it's going to end up being like a puff piece about like how proud they are of like the quality of the squad. You know, they think that like we've got a lot of great potential and young players that have the right mentality to like, you know, take the club forward. And then they'll be asking Frank like, what did you think of the interview? And he'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't watch it.
What they do is they just Liverpool.
Yeah, Ben Haynes, who does those interviews, is such a massive Spurs fan and such a great guy. Really, really good, you know, at what he does, the best at what he does. But I understand that he can't go and ask Lange directly, why did you mess up or whatever, can he? It's just the situation that he's in.
Johan Lang would just blame Liverpool anyway. Well, they can't conduct business. That's why we couldn't get our player in and stuff like that. You can already see it coming. But we show an ambition towards the women's team, the under-21s team. So if you're looking for something different to watch, go and watch them. That's what they're going to do.
They should get the guy who does the post-match interviews where he's like, we were on top of them for the first 5 minutes, Frank, you know, what did you make of that? You know, like, or tough place to go, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Frank, you know, you should get that guy to do it with Johan Lange. Probably spin it very well. Really appreciate it.
I think every YouTube channel should get one question each, and then they just do it that way.
Yeah, that would actually, I mean, my best of luck to him in that case. Really appreciate all the generous support, by the way, from everybody. It's really, really kind and good to see your guys' thoughts on the situation, making honestly, our lives a lot easier because then, you know, it's almost like I don't have to have as many questions as I do. So I really appreciate you guys. Martin Knightsbridge coming in. Yeah.
Sorry, just quickly, there's also 2,000 people watching right now. So, you know, whatever platform you are watching on right now, please come across to YouTube, smash the subscribe and smash the like and help your boys out.
Martin Knightsbridge member for 30 months. There's nothing the board can say to justify this window with players dropping like flies on top of the players already out and the ones not even replaced. Dave, did you give that stat or did Sam give that stat of 9 players out in just this month alone of January? That would be a player lost every 3 days, basically, like without games being played. It's insane.
I did. Yeah, it's madness. But look, like I said, I don't think it's a case that the club weren't trying. I don't think everyone's sitting inside the office watching, you know, reruns of Scrubs or anything like that and sitting down with popcorn singing Kumbaya. I think they're out there trying. But, you know, tell me what's attractive about Tottenham right now. That's the thing. Tell me one thing that's attractive about Tottenham. And if people can't come up with much, then how do you expect players to sign on here? And I think that's genuinely what's happened. There's just not a clamour of interest for players to come to Tottenham.
It's not all the cryo chambers or all the
you know, like I've no doubt if the board could have went out and brought in more players like Susan and stuff. Could have brought in a ton of them, but what difference are they really going to make as well?
Yeah, especially
the players
for the
we're
now.
after don't want to come.
Yeah, especially for the here and now. Want to say hello to DJ AK. Good to see you, DJ. Good to see you, Big D, as well. Big up to you, my friend, and also Queen Allie's in the house. Really appreciate you, Queen Allie. Absolute legends. We're gonna get on to the Romero stuff.
Subject. Yeah,
there was so much there was actually, I'm glad that we did get to talk about Johan Lange because I'm not a big fan of his and it seemed like that did spark a lot of conversation from you guys. But in the thumbnail, we are supposed to be talking about Cristian Romero, who has once again called out the board, saying in a recent Instagram post that I wanted to be available to help the players, even though I wasn't feeling well, especially since we only had 11 players available. Unbelievable, but true and disgraceful, he said, with a big face palm emoji, which I did enjoy, not to hide any words. He posted that the day of the transfer window deadline. Sam, do you think that was intentionally timed by Cristian Romero?
He's not one to really hide his thoughts, is he? I mean, he must be running that account, right? Because surely unless he's got a media team that he's like right on top of telling them, write this down or you're fired.
Well, allegedly he is.
Yeah. Either way, he's still effectively running the account, right? So I don't know. I think that it's definitely purposely timed. I think that he's right. Again, I don't know if I 100% agree with the captain doing it, but then I also, at the same time, I really respect the captain doing it because he's showing us that he's not just a mouthpiece for the club. But he's never been, and I'm sure that they should have surely thought about this, like at the time when they were thinking about making it. I know that it's Frank's decision, but I'm sure there'd be discussions. And I do wonder I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but I do wonder what they do now with Romero, because they didn't punish him last time. Do they let it? Do they leave it unpunished? I feel like that breeds a very poor mentality between the players and the owners of the club.
No, I agree.
If they do punish him and fine him, I think every fan should get together worldwide and try and pay it for the guy. Just protest for him.
Billy, Matt Law revealed that one source close to him, who has experience of working with Cristian Romero, said that he must feel like promises have not been kept. He didn't join Tottenham as a rebel, so something must have caused him to go down this path. It just seems impossible that he would have keep having a pop at the club if something hadn't happened in the background. Do you think something has happened that's caused Romero to just come out this way so regularly?
Almost certainly, I think. I did see some people online and Sky Sports News were saying he's calling the injury situation a disgrace. I don't think that makes any sense because, this guy is very precise with his timing. If that was true, he would have just posted it after the Man City game. He's waited till after the transfer window closed, almost to a minute, posted it online, and then it's the same as what he did before when he posted about Ange when Frank was appointed almost to the minute as well. Like, this guy knows what he's doing. And again, he posted before about the board multiple times. So it's definitely purposeful. I think you can definitely read into the fact that something has happened. Obviously, what came out afterwards today, Gaston Haddour, who is, for all intents and purposes, a mouthpiece for Romero, the guy that did an interview at Tottenham Hotspur Way with Romero, the guy that posted the news that Romero was using the Argentinian medical team and not the Tottenham medical team for Romero. Like, this guy is essentially Romero's mouthpiece, has come out and said he's leaving in summer. I think you can definitely read between the lines that something has gone wrong. What I think will be interesting, I'm just speculating here, is that it's interesting that at the end of the day today, the end of the work day anyway, that has dropped from Romero's mouthpiece. So I wonder if Romero was punished by the club today, or something happened with the club today, or something. There was a meeting. Last time he said Langer and Frank met me about it, or Frank said him and Langer met him about it. I wonder if the club have done something today, which has then led him to, ring up his journalist mate and say, "I'm going in summer." I think it'd be foolish to think that none of this is intentional from Romero, and I think every single bit of it is.
Of course it is. Well orchestrated.
Do you think he's been punished by the club, Dave, behind the scenes, and then he's almost doubled down now by saying, well, sell me then in the summer?
Yeah, look, I'm sure the club will probably try and punish him, but, if they do, it's just going to, we need him between now and the end of the season. We need to try and keep him as happy as we can, so I wonder if they do, I wonder will he maybe down tools a little bit or lose his enthusiasm for the game at Tottenham Hotspur, and at the end of the day, he's your club captain right now. So I think they're in a bit of a tricky situation. I think it's media management, by saying he's calling out the injury crisis, moaning about that. Yeah, of course he is. I think there's a massive element to that statement. But the follow through is at the board. There's no coincidence he's put it out, like Billy said, after transfer window. But if you want to go back at Romero's time, at the football club, he previously criticised the club's transfer policy in December 2024, telling Spanish broadcaster Telemundo that their lack of spending was causing the club to fall behind our rivals. It's the second time in recent weeks that Romero has spoken out on social media. I think, what was it he wrote not so long ago? The owners only show up when things are going well to tell a few lies. He was made sort of alter that statement. And then also in September 2024, he reposted a social media message from the Argentinian journalist that criticised Tottenham for not arranging private travel to bring players back from international duty. So it's clear that this guy is fed up with the board, the broken promises, and it's clear he doesn't feel like they're doing everything to help protect their players and have them in the best condition on the football pitch, and that their only aim is to save money where they can. Private travel should be standard for these players this day and age, and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, it's on us to get our players back as quick as we can so they have the right time to prepare for games and stuff. But the fact that we're willing to let them travel back on the arrangements that the international team makes than when every other club. And if you're a player sitting on that, and you're one of only a few players sitting on that travel coming home that Argentina have organised back to the UK, you're sitting there going, my club don't give a fuck about me. When you're seeing other clubs that are being pulled back. So this guy has had a long outstanding issue with the ownership, where I think he's got a bit more balls than what Harry Kane had. Harry Kane came through the academy, so he's in a bit of a different situation. But Romero has no loyalties to anyone at this football club, so he'll have no problem saying it as it is. And at the end of the day, it's his responsibility as captain, to come out and sort of put pressure on the board to do more. And I would hope many fans back him, because this is a guy that up to recently, or up, I think a lot of people are behind his statement now because they're pissed off with the board. But a lot of people have questioned this guy's commitment to the club and everything else, that he prefers country over club, etc. This guy went out against Man City in an absolute state, really unwell, to try and put on a performance for this football club and try and help out. He's continuously calling out the board, and us fans should start backing players when they do this. I don't know about you guys, but any good players we get, is anyone else sick of seeing them walk off the top clubs and winning trophies after trophies? Because when they start lifting them, I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, imagine if we kept him together. Imagine the trophies we could have lifted with these guys. And I'm absolutely fed up with seeing them walk out and go to clubs with more ambition that are meeting their expectations. I'm fucking sick of it. It's been like that my whole lifetime. I'm nearly 40 years of age now, and nothing has changed since I started supporting this club, as a fucking child, in terms of our best players walking away all the time for success. But then us fans also get butthurt by it. If you don't want to be here, go. No, you can't. That's why we're left with some of the shit we're left with, over the last couple of seasons, with that exact attitude. We showed that attitude towards Harry Kane. Brendan Johnson got a bigger fucking fanfare and more tears shed over him than what Harry Kane did leaving this club and stuff like that. We have it all wrong sometimes as a fan base. Stop getting butthurt by your best players telling you the reality of the situation, the lack of ambition and stuff, and actually start supporting them. That way, then we might actually get players in here to help them. And then, hey, presto, we can be the ones having more parades like we had in the summer. It's not a difficult concept to understand. Start backing your best players. We have to.
Billy, I know we have to let you go. Thanks for being on with us this evening. Anything to plug with Change for Tottenham? Of course, everybody do follow them here. I'm going to put the link in again to follow for more protests in and around the club. But any final words here, Billy?
Yeah, so I think we've got Romero on our side now, so we're definitely going to be active. We're going to see. We're going to reflect on the Man City game, try and get him involved, and we'll be back. So yeah, keep an eye. I think we're going to drop something tonight, and then we'll be back for sure. But thank you guys, been a pleasure as always, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
Big up, Billy.
Thanks,
see
Billy.
you, my man.
Appreciate your support, man. Thanks for coming on. Do follow them over here, everybody, in case you feel like Billy does, like Sam does, like Dave does, and like we all do here, and you are getting frustrated and you want to do something about it, or at least have your voice be heard. Do follow that account, because you will definitely be seeing, I imagine, more and more demonstrations and protests throughout the season. I just want to welcome in some other people that have joined the house. Really appreciate you guys. We have Jake G in here. He's saying just caught up on the stream and have to agree that this is a board problem. Unfortunately, they are not punishable, though, the same way that players, managers, and directors of football are. Madness, really. Queen Ellie saying new film coming out in the cinemas soon. Rebel with a cause. Romero. K32. It won't be much fun watching Arsenal win the league while we get relegated. Pick up to you, K32. Good to see Big D. And then Sonny J as well. Really appreciate you guys supporting the channel as members. We have some more questions still on Romero here. Sam, Dave was making a passionate argument about how there are probably fans out there that are really frustrated with Romero, that are angry with Romero for making these statements. Are you one of those that feel like he should kind of keep this to himself? He should keep this private, or are you okay with him making it public?
No, I'm like, part of me is like, maybe he should keep it private, but I respect him for putting it out. I'm more annoyed at him for his constant rushing out and leaving us exposed at the back. Like, this for me is kind of like, I can understand why potentially if people are annoyed, because he's also, in my opinion, he's put in good performances. He scored a lot of goals, but defensively, I think he's actually not been amazing this season. I feel like I'm putting that lightly. I've been a lot of the games, I'm just watching him and thinking, why can't you just stay in your position and help us right now? As I said, like, nothing against the guy. He's obviously clearly a great player, and he's actually, what's he, our second or third top scorer at the moment? That's how bad it is. Like, I understand he's leaving his position a lot to go forward. I've got nothing against that. It's just when he's rushing out defensively, when players are doing a 1-2, and then we just have this gaping hole like in the back line. That's the only thing. But in terms of his statement, I don't think that if you read it and actually understand like the context behind what he's saying, I don't think that anyone could really argue with it being said. And we've clearly seen over the last few months, the football players feel no attachment to the club at all. Other than the fact that they won the league, the Europa League last season, it seems like the majority of them won out. You know, you've got your best players offering scraps up to the fans. You know, you got senior players telling young players after defeats not to clap the fans. You know, and then you can see it from the other side, the players to the owners and the board and everything. It's like you've got players coming out and making these statements that it's not good enough, and it isn't good enough. So it just feels so disjointed now, and I feel like it all kind of harks back to everything we've been talking about. Like, these players are obviously going to have friends in the national team and etc. that we're looking at, and you know, as soon as they come over, it's like, oh, Pedro, like, what Spurs like? Don't bother, brothers. Like, go anywhere else.
Do you is it a bad look? It's just Sam, as a follow-up, that he is the captain and the leader of this football club. Is it a bad look on Romero that he tends to do this and release these public statements, or is it just a bad look on the club? Really, not even.
Yeah, I think it's the latter, because I think ultimately you can accept that Romero's he's 26. He's a 26-year-old or 27-year-old guy, who's clearly frustrated, you know, and you can understand his reasonings for doing it. Whereas it looks bad for the club that your captain feels so strongly about how incompetent you are, that he's now made 2 statements in the matter of months on his Instagram that he's I don't know if he's deleted this one, but he's obviously deleted the last one. That's a terrible look, especially, as you say, it's your captain. It's the player who is supposed to be the face of the club. You've gone from like the absolute money magnet that is Son, nicest guy in the world, to Romero, who doesn't give a shit if he kicks your teeth in. You know what I mean?
Well, he was also on that panel, right, at the beginning of the season, sitting next to Vinay, sitting next to Johan Lange, talking about the season, what's ahead, and then he's doing this. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Keeping it like Franken wanted him to do when he mentioned the last time Romero done it. You know, we want to keep it internally. That only suits the owners, the likes of Vinay, the likes of Johan Lange. That's all it suits. You know, at the end of the day, I know some fans will look at what Romero's doing and going, it's self-serving. He wants to engineer a move and get out of here in the summer. Understand that. That's clearly what he's trying to do. You know, when he signed on that new contract, it's clear he was made promises just like Harry Kane was made promises, and they've broken them promises just like they done to Harry Kane, and he sort of expressed the same, you know, in times gone by. But the reality is, he only wants to leave because we're not showing ambition to kick on and win trophies and be competing for trophies every single season. Is that a bad ambition to have? Every single one of us fans have that ambition. That's what we want. We want to be involved in semi-finals, finals, you know, in the last 8 games with a chance of maybe trying to win a league title and stuff. That's what we want. So you know what he's doing? It's not like he's shitting on absolutely everybody inside the football club and everything else. You know, he's making blanket statements about lies and ambition and stuff like that. We need to start supporting these guys. And you also look at it. Why is it left on Romero to drive standards and ambition? Where's that from the people higher up? You know, and at the end of the day, I'm not being funny, but a good captain, you know, I get he makes some mistakes on the pitch, but I feel like a lot of other people that make mistakes on the pitch, none of it gets highlighted. With Romero, people want to constantly call it out. But when I tried to call out what Brennan Johnson didn't do, people didn't like it or didn't want to hear it. Other players, and I feel like it just gets more scrutinized with Romero. It was the same with Harry Kane. As soon as he didn't score in 1 or 2 games, what did Harry Kane do today? Harry Kane's useless. Like, yeah, but he scored like 25 goals this season. You know, how many winners has he scored this season and stuff like that. You know, and I think Romero gets a bit of an unfair judgment when it comes to some of the mistakes he makes on the football pitch. He's not perfect, but he's got the right fucking ambition, and an ambition that I can get with. And when he's on that football pitch, although he makes some mistakes, he puts everything into it. He fucking leaves his heart out there. And that's what I want from my players. You know, and he just wants better for himself at this football club in terms of trying to win things. And I have no problem with him calling out the board whatsoever, because everyone else inside keeps their lips closed. The only other person that done it was Conte when he wanted to get himself sacked because he couldn't handle being surrounded by fucking losers. He couldn't handle it. He couldn't wait to get out of here, you know. And Romero was the same. Harry Kane was the same and stuff like that. At some point, you got to stop being butthurt by it and stand by him. He's the only one that actually is coming out and saying, hang on, I want to win things, borderline to you and stuff like that. Got to start backing this guy.
The only thing with that I was saying about his mistakes. And I agree with you that.
No, I get what you're saying, though. I do get what you're saying.
But I think like it annoys me more than it does with other players. Obviously, for me, I feel like other players do get heavy criticism, but with Romero, it annoys me because I feel like a lot of the times when he's doing this stuff, it looks like he's playing for himself. And for me as the captain, I don't want a player playing for themselves. Maybe in the past, as you mentioned, Kane was playing for himself as well. But when you're playing for yourself as a striker, you're scoring goals. And Kane had the ability to do that. But with Romero, it's like if you're playing for yourself, you want to make like a highlight reel tackle or something like that, but you don't make it, then everyone else suffers because of it. So it's only that. Obviously, it's the same thing with goalkeepers. Defenders are like one of the last lines of defense. So when they make a mistake, it's obviously highlighted more. So I can accept that. But
your better players as well, it's highlighted if they make a mistake.
Yeah, 100%,
you expect perfection.
100%.
That's just natural.
It's held to higher standards, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I do get that.
Wanted to say hello to Ian Ferguson and Sebas, who have also joined the building. Big up to you guys. Jerome saying we are in the last 16 of the Champions League, and that is enough to attract players. But again, lazy recruitment, so no excuses. He's kind of maybe going against what you're saying, Dave, that maybe Spurs are unattractive. Jerome saying maybe we're more attractive than we would like to believe.
Do you think any of them players really believe that Tottenham are going to win the Champions League? Let's be brutally honest. I know we can sing our song, 17th, the rest we're on our way to Budapest and stuff like that. Does anyone really believe with the injury crisis we've got, the caliber of manager we've got, stuff like that, that we're really going to win the Champions League? Look, I sit here and I hope and believe as the next man. Champions League is a bigger step up than the Europa League. You get bigger and better teams in the knockout stages than what you did in the Europa League. The Europa League is an easier competition to win. Don't get me wrong. We shouldn't take it for granted. How many other times have we been in the Europa League and never won it? So we should appreciate it. But the Champions League is a much more difficult sort of competition. And I'm not being funny. I just don't think we've got the goals in us to be able to go and put the bigger teams to bed, in terms of in them games, you might create 2 chances. You're going to have to take both of them. Are we really that clinical? I'm not sure we are. So, and I think many people will look at the bread and butter in the league, and they'll also look at it and go, well, they're also in massive danger of getting relegated. I could sign on there and I could be playing in the Championship next summer after signing a 4 or 5 year contract. So, I think, we're just not an attractive proposition. And, I know we're all screaming out for forward players, but put yourself in a forward player's shoes. Is Thomas Frank going to make you a better player and enhance you as a forward player? No. If you're a midfielder or a defender and you look at it and you go, but yeah, he can enhance my reputation. Look at the amount of goals he's got Romero and Mickey van de Ven scoring. You got a centre-back that's giving you 10 plus goals a season. And the quality that we have them, you're going to attract major interest all around fucking the world. Same with a midfielder. Paulinho, one of the most defensive midfielders we have. Yet the highest scoring midfielder we have. You know what I mean? So defensive players, Frank will make them look better and enhance their reputation. But not forward players. Then you also have to ask the question. We were interested in Wissam Buemo. If Frank was that good, why didn't they want to come and play for him again? Why did one opt to go to Newcastle and one opt to go to Man United, even though we beat them in the Europa League? And they were clearly heading in a shit direction under the previous manager, but yet he still chose them over Thomas Frank. We could have offered them the wages Man United and Newcastle have offered them. Why didn't want to come and play for this guy? Because I guarantee you, a lot of forward players will feel like they're restricted in this sort of system. They'll go and play for like a Jose or a Conte because they have a history of winning, playing a sort of pragmatic way and stuff like that. But Frank doesn't. So if you're a forward player, you ain't coming here. You're just not.
Yeah. I am in the camp, though, like Jerome, of not wanting to give much of the recruitment team that many excuses, really, because I felt like I said, we were that way under Hitchin, and I think we have to learn from that these guys do actually have money to work with at the end of the day. If they don't feel like they can get the top level players, maybe like what Sam was saying earlier, there may be some more debatably talented players that you can go after still to try to bring into the club that can still make an improvement on the team. So I'm definitely with you on some of this, Jerome.
Look, I'm not excusing that they've done nothing. Of course, they could have went and done a few bits, but I didn't wake up yesterday morning on deadline day with excitement or get sucked into anything, because Frank was already trying to tell us in the pre-match press conference to the City game that if the right player isn't there, we're not making a move because it just hinders what we can do in the summer. So they're already sending out the sound bites beforehand, and that it seems like that's their strategy, that they want to be bringing in either a player of a certain caliber now or a real young player that they believe can kick on. But if you've got the player of a certain caliber doesn't want to come, like we were sitting there probably waiting for Robertson all day yesterday, but Liverpool couldn't do that in that left back. So it means we couldn't get our guy and stuff. These things happen. And then, you know, I'm not being funny. They went and signed that young Scottish kid, but he's not going to come in and save us and stuff like that. And, you know, we are like in years gone by, we've had so many senior players shipped out on loan that hasn't worked and stuff. And I think whether I agree with it or not, you know, I agree by not just filling this squad with absolute shit again, because it doesn't help you. It hinders you. It makes the manager's job more harder to do. And then when he's to rely on shit and you see shit on the football pitch, it's him that's going to take the blame, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, the reality is the players of the caliber that we're after, they just didn't want to come here this January. They just didn't.
And then Faz Radfar saying Romero must have been given reassurances in the summer. Do you think that was just around recruitment, Sam? Those reassurances that the board are going to do their very best to avoid another 17th place finish? Was that probably the conversation?
Well, I just don't know, like, what else you could have said to him to make him want to stay. We just won a trophy. If you are him, in my opinion, you're looking to leave on a high, having been sold so many dreams. So that they must have told him, you know, we're going to go out and sign like a bunch of top players. You know, they probably sold in the dream on Semenyo. They told him they were going to get Morgan Gibbs-White, a bunch of other players like that. And in the end, we've ended up with Conor Gallagher. And I know I keep saying that like it's not necessarily negative that it's Conor Gallagher, but it's just Conor Gallagher. And maybe Sousa comes in and ends up being an absolute revelation, you know. But right now, he's an unknown entity from a foreign league, doesn't even speak the language, you know. So you're putting so much pressure on him to come in. And I know that fans want to try and give young players a time, but you know, you can imagine if he's making a few mistakes in a game and we end up losing it or whatever, it's going to be, you know, tough for the kid as well. And then all of a sudden, it's just another player you've brought in that it hasn't really worked out for, and they end up leaving the club on loan and then leaving on a permanent the next year. You know, we've seen this before. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen, but from past experiences, it's likely.
Like the thing is, look at Kinski last January, right? Signed him to alleviate the goalkeeper problem. What did it do? It only made it worse. It only exasperated it. And if they would have done that properly last January and signed in a goalkeeper of a certain caliber, maybe you have the choice to be able to drop Vicario with him making mistakes and bring another guy in and give him his opportunity. And the club can't keep making them mistakes in January. You're still at the point where anybody will do. You've got to bring in the right players that are actually going to improve the situation, because if not, you just make it worse further down the line and stuff like that. But also, what I will say on the Romero thing as well is, I would say to Spurs fans, enjoy the last few months of Romero. If this chant takes off that, you know, Romero is right, the board is shite, and that's a big chant between now and the end of the season, the club, if you're an owner of a football club, you're not having that, because it sends out the signal that the player's bigger than the football club, and they're not going to have that, and they will sell him this summer. You know, they're not going to keep letting them put out statements criticizing them and stuff like that. At some point, they're going to go, right, off you fucking go. We're not having it. Not tolerating it. So they might not find him now. They might not make a statement now, but in the summer, they will let him go, especially if that chant takes off amongst the fan base. Because then it's almost Romero versus club, and they're not going to have that situation.
Sam is right, though, Faz, that they must have guaranteed or said something to the lines of ambition to have him sign that contract extension, because there were a lot of people that were under the assumption he wouldn't, that they were prepared to sell him this summer. But they were able to convince him over the summer. It wasn't like at the end of the season or anything like that. It was over the summer. So they must have done something to convince him of that, because it would make sense for him just to have left on a high. He had interest from other clubs as well. They were prepared to, you know, listen to offers. So something must have been done. Something must have been said. So
they did give him the captaincy of the football club as well. So, you know, I think there's that alongside. We're gonna show ambition. We're gonna sign this. We're gonna be different to Daniel Levy, everything else. You know, Harry Kane sort of alluded to some of the same things. You know, lack of ambition. You know, that he was broken promises and stuff like that. So if it's happened to the likes of Harry Kane and players in years gone by, it's definitely happened to Romero as well.
I wonder, though, like now that he has this new contract, though, it's almost like he has theoretically more power to call out the board, because he knows he's been given all this power and like this leadership at the club. He's under a lot more money. Like he could just stay at the club, you know, like he has, you know, a lot more years left. Like they would have to listen to really, really big offers in order to let him go. Like, it's almost like he's doubling down now that he has this contract. Like, he feels secure enough and feels powerful enough to make these calls out of the board. Whereas previously, when he did, maybe it was a bit riskier to do it because they could have just let him go and sold him like in the summer. But now, like, it's going to be, obviously there will be offers, but like,
Well,
it will take serious money to get him out of that. It's just almost like they maybe weren't anticipating that Romero would still just double down and call him out since the new contract. But it's been the opposite. He feels more comfortable to call them out with the new contract.
Well, it's a win-win if the club allow him to move on, he'll go to a top club. We'll get big money for him. And he's got out of here and he'll go on to pick up more trophies. This is a guy that's won a World Cup. You think he's happy sitting here, not lifting trophies or not competing? Of course he's not. Once you get a taste for trophies, you want fucking more. And that's just the reality of it. It's like when people get a taste for big money, they want more, they want more, they want more. It's the same with a player with a trophy. And, and if the board end up don't sell him and they show ambition and we start competing, then he wins. So it's win-win for Cristian Romero. He's nothing to lose.
Yeah. Last question on Romero, Sam. There could be a million, but I want to not make you too hungry tonight. What do you make of the fact that so many other Spurs players actually liked his post? Do you think that they share similar frustration with the lack of business being done in January? And I'm telling you, like, half of the squad liked that Instagram post.
Well, I'm sure I don't have to tell you, Jack, because your number one hero, Ali Gold, did actually say that quite a few times, especially after the first one this season that came out, that Romero is an incredibly liked and powerful figure amongst the staff. So,
my leader.
Yeah, it's kind of like dropkick your teacher in the comments the other day, when he said, "When I talk, people listen." But but yeah, I think with Romero, it's like, I think again, it's another damning indictment that like he's able, I doubt he's had to debate very hard to get players on his side about this whole thing. Everyone's got eyes, he's probably been like kind of egged on by the actions and the words of his fellow teammates to say 100%. That. It's he wouldn't just be putting that out without any other people feeling the same way. And if I remember correctly, quite a few of the players liked the last post as well.
And the thing is, to your point, Sam, if he didn't have the support, if he's coming out with it without the support, he's clearly looking to leave the football club. But if he knows he's got that support behind him, then clearly, he feels like he's trying to make a change, or at least trying to make some sort of change, and that he's got a lot of other people sort of feeling the same way. Because if you think the board don't know about a lot of them other players liking it, you best believe they do right now. And then if it's a lot of our better players, all of a sudden they're looking at the summer going, we have a big job on our hand to keep our best players, let alone try and bring in more players and stuff like that. So I think Sam's correct. It's clear that he's got the support, and you can see with some of the videos that Madison makes, with the clips of Romero in there, that he's a well-liked figure, But also, I'd argue, I think half of them are also shit scared of him as well, which I think is also the sign of a really good leader as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even Dane Scarlett liked the post, which just really says it all, right? That even Dane Scarlett's not even at the club right now, is on loan still, saw Romero's post and liked it. It does show that, yeah, like Sam said, a lot of people seem to respect him and approve of what he thinks about the club, but then also that maybe they do feel pretty similarly, even if it means that they get less playing time and whatnot, that they don't feel like they're being backed. Manager has been being backed. Everyone's just looking at the board, and we'll see how that plays out from here. Sam, we're going to move on to the members' questions, but like I said, I don't want to make you too hungry tonight. So if you had any final words or anything's left that you want to get off your chest about yet again another disappointing window, or just in general about Spurs.
I just think that, first of all, thanks for having me on, and big up the chat, everyone who's in. Like and subscribe. I just think that after this conversation, these are often, I'm sure the chat is aware, these are often therapy for us as well, to like get frustrations off our chests. I don't feel any less calm than I did before I went on, and I certainly don't. I certainly don't disagree with my statement that this is a 0 out of 10 window. And as much as I know, I can't remember who it was that actually said it. I know that you said don't take survival for granted, and I'm definitely not. but we might stay up, and I'm pretty sure that we will stay up. But what about next season? You know, there's just so much negativity and so much uncertainty around the club at the moment that it genuinely could go any direction. And I remember a few months ago, Ben Bowman, I think it was, put something about saying we could become the next Everton, and he got absolute pelters, people saying Everton were like a really big club, they'd won loads of trophies, and from what I understood it, and I think what he ended up clarifying was that it wasn't necessarily that Everton were a bad club, and he was saying, "Oh, we might become like the worst team in the league." He was saying a team with an illustrious history and a tradition that ends up kind of fading into nothingness and obscurity in the Premier League after brief forays forward, like they had under Ancelotti, and I'm sure everyone else is feeling the same way as me, but I'm worried that we genuinely are sleepwalking into no longer being a big team. You know, we see all of these stuff we have to debate all the time with teams like Aston Villa, Newcastle, when they say, why are Spurs even in the big six? And it's going to get to a point where it's like, we actually aren't in the big six anymore. So I just, not to cause mass hysteria and panic, but, I feel like everyone's eyes are open except for the owners of the club and the board, because if the board actually genuinely cared other than just getting a paycheck, they would not have allowed us to go into the rest of the season with the absolute tatters of a squad that we do have. And I'll leave it on that.
Spot on.
Very, very good closing statement, Sam. Actually, fair play.
Sorry
we couldn't provide you that therapy. Hopefully we have something better to be discussing next week for you, but thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, my man. Enjoy your evening.
Enjoy your
Come
evening.
on, Spurs. As much as I shit talk
as always
them, I love them for some reason, and although I feel like I won't end up going to the stadium this season, that'll be my protest. It'll be the first time in like 16 years that I've not gone. At least once during the season. That's it. I'm not going now. Unless I'm a shameless guy. If we get far and there's an opportunity, I'm going to go. But for now, I'm going to not go.
What I will say is make your stand in the league. Go to a European game. Treat yourself. I think that's a fair one.
Yeah, I'll stick to that. I like that. I'll treat myself.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, everyone needs to get there.
Thanks,
once
Sam.
to bring some tension. Have a good evening, Sam.
See you, man.
Pleasure.
See you, man. Thank you for your time.
No worries. Take it easy.
Everyone do follow Sam on Twitter. I put over his link in the chat there. And then also as well, if anybody is a member, in case you didn't know, you do get the perk of being able to ask us questions at the end of the show just to cool down and wrap up. And of course, it usually is an opportunity for us to answer anything that maybe we didn't get to talk about on the run sheet and on the panel today. Really do appreciate all the support from all the members. So many of you guys in the chat and so many of you guys in here with us on stream. So we do appreciate it. And thanks to everybody as well who has supported the channel with their own comments, their own opinions via just comments or in the super chats or milestones, being members. We do really appreciate it.
There's also 2,200 people watching. A lot of you over on Twitter. If you are enjoying the conversation, I urge you to come across to our YouTube channel, smash the subscribe button, and show us your support. Thank you.
Limpy Down Under. Bonus question: we have squad depth problems and all of the loans to other clubs we currently have, is there one loan we shouldn't have made? Good question. Is there one in particular, Dave, that you just think just didn't need to happen maybe this January?
I
guess we could have just kept Jamie Donnelly, to be honest. Like the fact that we loaned him out again.
He's one I would have kept and had him in and around, putting a bit of pressure on Xavi Simons, or a player that you could rotate out, for Xavi Simons. He's a player that I would have probably kept. I probably would have called a Vescovic or a Mikey Moore back. You're looking at it, Dane Scarlett, they loaned him out to clear a path for Mason Melia, who, by the way, has been injured so far up to this day with a back problem. I spoke about that a few weeks ago. But again, Mason Melia stepping up from the League of Ireland, how much of an impact is he really going to have, despite me being Irish? I really wish the kid so much, at Tottenham Hotspur because at the end of the day, I'd love another sort of Robbie Keane figure, to sort of look up at this football club. And Tottenham have always had a lot of good Irish players over the years, and I'd like to see some Irish boys get back in there. But at the end of the day, you would like to think Dane Scarlett would maybe have a bigger impact between now and the end of the season than Mason Melia if we were to lose, said Dom Solanke because he rolled his ankle and stuff like that. So that's one that I maybe look at and maybe go, not so sure on that one.
Yeah. Thank you, Phil, by the way, for the kind comments on the show. If you did enjoy the stream, everybody, do smash the like button, please, if you haven't already. We do ask usually at the beginning of the show, but sometimes we do forget to ask during the show, so to appreciate it. AK Shag saying, can you name one starting goalkeeper in the Premier League that Vicario is better than? I've seen him make this comment in the past. Whoever Wolves goalkeeper is, I would say he's probably better than. And the thing is with Vicario is I actually feel like under Thomas Frank, his weaknesses have been exposed more, in that with Thomas Frank, you kind of have to be able to pump it long on a lot of occasions. Whereas with Ange, only think of a handful of times where we just decided just to boot it long, up to the striker. It was religious under Ange to just try to play out from the back, keep it on the floor, keep it on the ground as much as you can. And as much as Vicario also kind of struggled with that, he was better at that than actually pumping it long. There's so many times where you can barely even get it more than 30 yards up the pitch. It's like kind of watching like a schoolboy game or something like that when the goalkeeper is barely able to kick it that far. He reminds me of one of those types of goalkeepers, really. So I think there are a few things that Thomas Frank has exposed him for. Also, shots from distance, he seems to struggle with a bit. And that's one thing that Thomas Frank seems to allow, is he's okay with players having strikes from distance. Vicario has struggled with that. With Ange, what he was amazing at was those one-on-one saves, those quick reactionary saves in dangerous situations. He was, if not world class, at dealing with those. But it seems like Vicario's skill set is very limited to certain things, and then in other areas he's just a very weak goalkeeper, to be honest. But I don't think he is the worst goalkeeper in the Prem, but he's
not the worst goalkeeper in the Premier League. I think he's better than a lot of options, in the bottom half of the table, to be honest, and some options in the lower up half of the table. But he's not a goalkeeper that's going to kick you on to be competing for trophies. One thing I realized with Vicario, and I've sort of picked up on it last season, it sort of happened at points in this season, is he doesn't fill anyone with confidence ahead of him. And that's a big thing as a goalkeeper, that you fill the back line with confidence and your midfielders with confidence and stuff like that. And I don't think he does. And I feel like, in moments, sometimes even when the game's going well, when we start to unravel, a lot of that happens with him, either making a silly mistake, shitty pass with the ball at his feet, or a sloppy touch and inviting pressure. And I think that's where, for me, I'm convinced he's never really going to kick us on to compete at the top on a regular basis. And if you do, he'd be like what a Ramsdale was for Arsenal, where the bigger the game, the more he's going to let you down. Let's not forget, Europa League final, pulled off some great saves, but that free kick right at the end, what the fuck was the guy doing? You know what I mean? It was Mickey van der Ven that saved his blushes. If Mickey van der Ven didn't do that, we would all be talking about Vicario potentially losing us a Europa League trophy. And that's where I'm convinced he's not the guy to help you go and compete week in, week out.
Yeah. Trinidad saying, question, Cootie has clearly realized he's been sold down the river like us long-suffering fans. Do you think it will pull the team together to survive the rest of this tough season, February, despite it being Frank ball? Come on, you Spurs. I guess he's suggesting, Dave, that the fact that Romero has doubled down, once again called out the board, that there will be this siege-like mentality maybe from the players to try to make the best of the situation, really. It's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I think that'll be the case. At the end of the day, if they all pull together, they know they'll get moves in the summer. If they don't, a lot of them will likely be here next season because a lot of clubs won't really want them and stuff like that because of how bad this season has gone. So I think there will be a part where you're hoping they will sort of galvanize, despite if they believe in Frank on the board and stuff like that. because at the end of the day, they've also got World Cup at the end of the season. A lot of them will want to make them squads. If you end up finishing just above relegation, and then you're going up against someone who's had a really good season with really good numbers, there's a chance that manager might take that guy instead. So, at the end of the day, there will be a part of them that will then have to pull it together, start pushing up the table, so that they will all make the World Cup squads, are guaranteed to make the World Cup squads, but also this month so that they can have a fair crack at the Champions League. Because if they don't pull enough points this month and come that Champions League time, we're sucked into it. The board will tell Thomas Frank to prioritise team selection towards the Premier League.
Tartan Spurs, big up Tartan, our man up in Scotland. Are you guys worried with regards to the youth pathway? I felt really disappointed with the news that Olasesi was about to leave the club. Why was he not given an opportunity instead of Basuma? Will we see Luca Williams-Barnett be given an opportunity? Tyrese Hall, we spent so much money on rubbish when we could have the answers in our academy. Harry Kane is our greatest ever goal scorer. He's from the academy. Give the youth a chance. This is from Dave's Bible, Tartan Spurs.
Honestly, Tartan, me and you must have the same book, my man, or you must have bought my Bible, my man, because this is something I've been speaking about for a long time at this football club. We keep persisting with shit. At what point does a manager make a stand and have the bollocks to turn around and go, I'm giving him an opportunity? The only manager that really done that, and it was the best decision he's ever made as a manager and should be massively credited with how good Harry Kane became at Tottenham, was Tim Sherwood. When Levy walked in and said, well, why are you playing him? We're selling him to Leicester for like 200,000. We spent 20 million and brought him in from Real Madrid. You've got to play Soldado. If you want to win games, Daniel, I'm playing Harry Kane. You need a manager that's gonna do that. Pochettino was the last real manager that sort of done that. He came in, we had a lot of young players out on loan with some others, pulled them all together, gave them their opportunity, and never looked back. And but the managers we're bringing in, Thomas Frank didn't work with an academy at Brentford. They don't have one. Ange Postecoglou, bar that stint he had with the Australia national team about 20 years ago, never works with youngsters. Conte Jose, consistently looking to bring in the most experienced player they can for the money with under their belt and stuff like that. You don't have a manager that's, first of all, since Pochettino, that is going to create a pathway for these guys. What's frustrated me even more, I'm not being funny, but when we bought Archie Gray and I put out a video saying, well, I don't think this is a great signing as everyone's telling me it is, and you go back and look at the comments I got underneath that video, ridiculed. You're telling me for the 40 million we spent on him, Tyrese Hall couldn't have put in some of the performances this guy's put in midfield, or been better than what Bergvall is, or Donnelly given more than what Bergvall has. I'm absolutely sick of it. I'm sick of it. We're sitting here screaming out for a left winger. Except Mikey Moore out on loan. I'm not being funny, but at times last season, he was one of the only ones that could cross a fucking football. He dragged us through the early rounds of that Europa League campaign. And we keep shipping these guys out on loan. You look at Madueke, some of the big money he's gone for. He was in the Tottenham Academy. He left because he wasn't given an opportunity to compete for a senior spot, despite other players not producing. But it seems to be within the club, from board level, we spend big money on these players. We want you to play with them and persist with them regardless. And a lot of what you're seeing with Tottenham going after these youngsters, it's not a plan that they're going to have to bring them all together and make one team. When you bring players in young enough and they're coming through the academy, when you sell them on, they go to 100% off your financial fair play and stuff like that, which then gives clubs more scope in terms of circumventing them rules and stuff like that, not being so constricted by it. That's what Tottenham are doing here. I'm sick of it. I'm absolutely sick of it. Some of them players that we have loaned out would be better serving than what some of the shit we have right now.
Well, especially when we find ourselves in these injury situations, Tartan, it's an excellent opportunity to give them their chance when we're just dwindling near 15th, 16th. There's not really much left to play for in the season like we had last season under Ange. Great time to embed the youngsters while you can. I think the other issue is that we just had managers that clearly do not feel comfortable playing young players on a regular basis and giving them their chance, as much as it also is a board issue. It seems to be a bit of a manager issue in that we're not bringing in the managers that would feel comfortable giving them their chance. Because let's be honest, during a lot of those games, like where it didn't matter anymore under Ange Postecoglou, there were a lot of good chances to give some of those young players more minutes and opportunities, and he even didn't feel that comfortable doing it. And
100%.
Same thing will happen under Frank. Frank will also, if we reach a stage where we're going to survive, we're out of the relegation scrap, I guarantee you he'll continue to play guys like Basuma. When
Will Lancashire's another one. Scored out away in Galatasaray when Bergvall couldn't even get on the ball and looked like a boy in a man's game. You know, we're struggling for strikers now. We cross the ball. The guy's 6 foot odd. Why not call him back, give him an opportunity to relieve Solanke at there for the last 10, 15 minutes of a game? You know, if you've got another important game coming up, and cross the ball and see if you can get him on the end of things and stuff like that. You know, and I'm surprised that if we couldn't get the players we got it, we you know, this January, why not call some of them guys back that you sent out to get first team experience to help in situations like this if they ever came around? Now Frank is having to pull up young 17, 18, 19-year-olds who have no experience at this level whatsoever. It's absolutely insanity. And if they aren't going to get their opportunities now, when are they ever going to get them? Let's be brutally honest.
Is it just me, or did he have a pop at Frank too? No credit to him, only his teammates. Hopefully more players follow his lead. Frank deserves to be put on blast too. I don't think the player's ever going to call out his own manager, artistry. Like, it's just...
Well, he won't play. You call out Thomas Frank, he's not playing.
Yeah, I think that's simple. I don't think in any situation would he ever do that. Even if he wants to, he just wouldn't. That's just the way it works with sports in general, not even football. Do you think Frank has a clause in his contract like Ange, where only being in Europe is why he still has a job? I'm not sure if that's the clause in his contract. I do wonder, though, if he performs poorly enough in the league, I wonder if there is a clause in his contract where they can fire him and not have to pay him out as much as they could. Like, I wonder if this 20 million payout or whatever it is conditional on him not tanking the league as much as he has been. So let's say he gets knocked out of the cup competition pretty early and he's still around 16th, 17th in the league. I wonder if they sacked him then. Do they not have to necessarily pay out the whole contract? I'm only speculating, though. Like, at least you hope maybe you put that sort of clause in a contract, because we found ourselves in a similar situation with the previous manager when it came to that. What players do you think?
Looking at the first two questions from there, look, I know you're not Thomas Frank's biggest fan. Neither am I. I don't believe he's the right guy to lead this club forward to where the fans want to go, even if you give him, you know, players of a certain level and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we can judge Frank and we can have more, like, better conversations about what he's showing up to this point, rather than trying to attach things to the guy, if you know what I mean.
What players do you think will excel under Poch? I guarantee these players will love him. He's the one manager that can bring back that Europa unity. I think it's more just the young players. Like, if he continues to have that in his repertoire as being a guy that can lean on young players, give them confidence, I think that's what we'll see. We'll see young players that maybe have been out on loan for a long period of time, not really been given a chance. And even some of the current young players that we already have at the club who are playing somewhat regularly, I could see him getting a real tune out of them, artistry. That's what I would say.
To be honest with you, I think he'll get out a lot out of a lot of them if they buy in. If they buy in, one thing you're guaranteed is they're going to be fitter than nearly every other team in the league. It's why Tottenham was so good under Poch. We were so fit. You look at Harry Kane post Poch and Harry Kane under Poch. Harry Kane was like that. Almost at times, his jersey was stuck to him and his stomach was inwards. You know, after Pochettino left, you know, Harry Kane sort of bulked up a little bit more.
Jose body.
Like that. And yeah, exactly. You know, so for me, I think anyone that buys in will certainly improve themselves, because it's when you're as fit as that, you can do anything and you feel like you can do anything as well.
Especially with the game becoming so physical, you could see that, you know, Pochettino could get a lot out of it. Sean Maddock, does not calling back and giving youngsters like Vuskovic mean they won't have any loyalty to the club? Do you see any likelihood of youngsters getting into the team given the ongoing injury crisis? Good question, actually, on that first part, right? That if you just continue to loan players out season after season after season, they would start to forget actually which club they're supposed to be playing for at some point.
Well, you start becoming disillusioned. You know, It's like, when am I going to get my opportunity? It's not like Tottenham are in a great state right now. They couldn't get anyone in this transfer window. You know, they're shelling injuries. They can barely field an 11 right now. And if they do, 2 or 3 of them have a sickness bug and stuff like that. If I ain't going to get my opportunity now, I'm never, ever going to get one. And the reality is, Tottenham ain't signing these players because they believe in the talent. They just want to, they see them hitting a certain value and they're going to make money off it. And that's the main thing behind these young players. It's not to get them into the team. And the ironic thing is, if they were, they'd actually save themselves some money. That's the ironic thing about it. Then you're not spending 60, 70 million every single position.
And if you play some of these youngsters more often, their value only goes up too. So if there reaches a point where you actually do feel like you have to sell them because they maybe just haven't totally made it in time, or they haven't been able to take advantage of all their opportunities. At least you've given them some of that game time where their value would only increase at the end of the day because they at least have experience and whatnot. That's the other frustrating bit, Sean, is that if we are going to get rid of some of these youngsters and sell them, I wish we gave them more opportunities and more of a handful of games, so that people could actually know what they're capable of. Because at the end of the day, I think it's not like you're going to hurt their value that much, to be honest. When they have no game time, like what value do they really have? And then we answered that earlier. I don't really see any youngsters getting into the team with the ongoing injury crisis unless it's totally, totally needs must for Frank. He's not going to go out of his way to do it, is what I would say. Iceman, why the hell didn't we get nothing done in January apart from Conor Gallagher and 2 kids? Squad is massively under strength with all the injuries. At least get a few loan players in the door. I mean, we covered a lot of this, Ricky. I think you're on the same exact boat as us. And do appreciate it. Hopefully you got to watch the stream back.
Just rehash just quickly for you, Ricky.
Yeah.
Don't think there was an interest of a certain caliber player we wanted to actually come to Tottenham, and I think that's a major part to do with it, to be honest.
Yeah, and also maybe we failed to mention this part where he's saying at least get a loan deal done or something. Like that's spot on. Like that also was.
But Johan Lang doesn't have the ability to do that, does he?
Clearly not.
Laissez incompetence is what they said in Home Alone, and it applies here.
I think that was part of Sam's point, was like, at least can we just sign a guy that we can debate over, at least, that whether they are good enough or not? Like they couldn't even do that. They couldn't even just bring in somebody that at least we could just feel like maybe they'll do well, maybe they won't. Like that's the frustrating bit, is we have literally no new bodies to look at that we can actually say, we'll be helping Thomas Frank. So frustrating, man. Yeah. Moondog, I'm just disinterested with Spurs at the moment. It's just getting worse. Don't blame me, Moondog. We do appreciate that you can still show interest in what we're putting out there, at least. Very, very kind of you, my man. Very kind of you.
A lot of fans are starting to become a bit disinterested with Tottenham Hotspur at the minute, my man. And can you blame them? I mean, you look at some of the shit we're being served up on the football pitch, and then you look at the people above it for help going, and there's no one you look at that go, well, he knows how to get us out of this situation. So I don't blame you. I think many fans are feeling like you, man.
Question for Dave, Jack, in the panel. Is there anything Thomas Frank can do that will change your mind about him? Curious if anything like a higher league position, string of performances, or Champions League run that'll convince you that Frank is the right man to manage Spurs next season. If he went on a crazy Champions League run, made it to a semifinal, if not a final, I would definitely have reconsiderations, but he is going to have to just turn it around quite quickly, to be honest. I think as well, I would say the remit at the beginning of the season was to finish around 7th, 8th, or 9th position, at least have us challenging for one of these European positions. If he fails to do that, I think we just got to get him gone, because there are managers that have far worse squads that are doing a lot better than he is in challenging for those European positions than him. So that's where I'm kind of at. He has to rescue our league position as best he can. And of course, a Champions League run would make me reconsider. But what's the likelihood of any of those happening right now? I'm not so sure, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, for me, first of all, apologize for questioning my loyalty. Second of all, apologize for blaming fans for results. Third of all, stop talking like a loser and start speaking like a winner. And fourth of all, start playing more on the front foot and taking risks going forward. You change all of them, which he's not going to do, then you might buy me back. Until then, I'm maintaining long-term, this guy is not the guy for the club. Not being funny. We clawed the game back against Man City, and we spoke about this before, about 2-0 being the most dangerous scoreline in football. It's happened to us, and I've spoke about at half-time in games, about at 2-0, sometimes you take your foot off the gas, and if the other opposition score one, you can almost feel the second one is coming. It's very hard to get yourself out of that easy sort of streak that you've put yourself into and gather the sort of momentum to get going again. We had Man City in that position, and then all of a sudden, Man City didn't wrestle back control of the game. We dropped off and allowed them back control of the game rather than pushing for a third. So for me, until that shit change, he's not getting my support. He's just not.
And there's a good comment here from Sean, actually, just saying we made 40 million off of Winks and Skip because they had experience. People in charge aren't even good at making. That's exactly my point, right? Like, at least give some of these youngsters some of the game time, because then you never know. It might get 5-10 more million out of them if you end up selling them just because of that. Even if you know they're not good enough, at least somebody at some level in the English pyramid or abroad will at least feel like, well, they showed some good games at a Premier League level. Maybe they're capable of doing it at this level. I completely agree with you, Sean. That was kind of the point I was trying to make. AK6, I'm in the same boat as you, Jack. Has to get us to top 7 minimum. I want to see a couple more wins in the Champions League. Yeah, exactly. Paul Brown, we are drowning, yet we do not sell or replace loan. Don't call back. Absolutely zero planning. And we are surprised. Big up, Paul Brown. Good to see you in the house with us, man. Thanks for tuning in to the stream. Really appreciate your support as a member as well. And thanks to everybody. Very, very generous support today. Really good conversations. We've gone over 2 hours here, which just shows that you guys have given us a lot to talk about. We didn't even get to all the questions that we wanted to ask. So that's really thanks to you guys. Thanks for doing my job for me, really, and almost doing the hosting practically, making my job easy. Appreciate you all. If you can, if you're still with us, do smash a like, and we'll be seeing you all tomorrow. I think we'll be doing a fan show tomorrow. So if you all remember, come on, have your say, have a discussion with us about the transfer window, about the season ahead. Would love to hear from you guys. And then Thursday, we'll be doing another panel show with the Irish boys. So we'll get their say on things.
Yeah. Look, thank you, everybody. Look, over 2,000 people, nearly 2,300 now sticking with us for the 2 hours, so really appreciate all of you and everyone that's given their thoughts in the chat, the questions as well, all the members that have given their questions at the end, and also to Billy and Sam for making themselves available. Look, at the end of the day, this is like therapy for us, but it's also not easy, to sit here and, be disappointed in the club and stuff like that all the time as well. So the fact that we can all do it together, thank you so much. Go and enjoy your evenings. And if you want to have your say, if you're still frustrated and still angry, make sure you come and see us tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. And we'll be here and you'll each get your say individually with us.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.